The world outside has ceased to exist in any form other than sound and cold. There is no horizon, no sky, no separation between the earth and the heavy, descending air. There is only the wind, a constant, low-frequency roar that presses against the wooden walls of the station, a physical weight that seeks to crush the small pocket of stillness inside. It is a night defined by the absence of light, a deep, pervasive darkness that swallows the landscape whole, turning the rolling hills and the distant tree lines into a single, uniform void of charcoal and deep indigo. The snow does not fall. It is driven, hammered horizontally against the rough-hewn logs, filling every crack, every seam, sealing the building into the side of the mountain, as if the winter itself is trying to reclaim the wood and the iron and the man who sits within it. Here, in the station, the air is thick with the scent of coal dust and kerosene, a heavy, oily smell that coats the back of the throat and settles deep in the lungs. It is a smell of containment, of old heat battling the encroaching freeze. The room is small, a box of shadows and flickering amber light. The lantern, hanging from a hook on the low ceiling, swings imperceptibly in the drafts that manage to worm their way through the chinking of the walls. Its flame is a small, desperate thing, a teardrop of orange fire that struggles to push back the gloom, creating a circle of visibility that barely reaches the corners of the room. The light catches on the dust motes suspended in the air, turning them into slow-moving stars that drift and swirl in the currents of heat rising from the cast-iron stove. The stove is the heart of the room, a squat black cylinder of iron that radiates a dull, sullen heat. It sits in the center of the floor, its metal skin pitted and scarred by years of fires, by the endless cycle of heating and cooling. Through the small grate at the front, a faint red glow pulses, the dying breath of the coal. It is not a roaring fire. It is a fire of endurance, a slow burn that consumes the fuel with a miserly patience. The heat it offers is localized, a small island of warmth in a sea of freezing air. Only a few feet away, the cold reasserts its dominance, creeping up from the floorboards, seeping through the glass of the single window, wrapping around the ankles and the wrists like invisible, icy shackles. The operator sits at the desk, a heavy wooden structure that spans the width of the far wall. The desk is old, its surface worn smooth by the friction of elbows and papers, the varnish rubbed away to reveal the dark, stained grain of the oak beneath. It is a landscape of its own, cluttered with the artifacts of the trade. A stack of paper forms, their edges curling in the dry air. A bottle of ink, the liquid inside thick and sluggish. A pen, resting in a groove carved into the wood. And the key. The telegraph key. It sits on a small wooden base, a mechanism of brass and bakelite, silent now, waiting. The brass is dull, tarnished by the moisture of the room and the oils of human skin, reflecting the lantern light in a muted, hazy smudge. It is a simple machine, a lever and a spring, a contact point that bridges the gap between silence and communication. But tonight, it is merely an object, heavy and cold to the touch. The operator does not move. He is a part of the stillness, a figure drawn in heavy charcoal strokes against the background of deep gray paper. His coat is thick, made of rough, dark wool that smells of damp sheep and old tobacco. The collar is turned up, scraping against the stubble on his jaw, a barrier against the drafts that curl around the back of his neck. He wears fingerless gloves, the wool frayed at the edges, revealing the pale, dry skin of his fingers. His hands rest on the desk, not touching the key, just resting, heavy and inert. He is listening. He is listening to the wind, to the groan of the timbers as the station shifts under the weight of the snow, to the hiss of the snow pellets striking the glass. But mostly, he is listening for the sound that is not there, The click-clack of the sounder, the voice of the wire. The wire is out there, somewhere in the dark. It is a thin, iron thread strung between poles that march blindly into the storm. It is a fragile lifeline, a tenuous connection to a world that seems impossibly distant. In the mind's eye, the operator can see the wire, coated in a thick sheath of ice, sagging under the burden, vibrating in the gale like a plucked cello string. He imagines the poles, tall and solitary, standing like sentinels in the whiteout, their wood groaning, the glass insulators capped with snow. The wire hums with the wind, a mournful, singing note that travels for miles through the desolation, a song that no one hears. It is a miracle that it holds. It is a miracle that the line remains open, that the circuit is not broken by a falling branch or the sheer, brute force of the ice. He stares at the sounder, a small electromagnet housed in a wooden box on the desk. It is silent. The brass arm is still. The silence is heavy, pressing down on the ears, louder in its own way than the storm outside. When the line is active, the sounder chatters, a rhythmic, staccato language of dots and dashes, a mechanical voice that speaks of trains and schedules, of weather reports and urgent messages, of life and death and the mundane passage of commerce. But tonight, the line is quiet. There is only the static, the faint, ghostly crackle that sometimes whispers through the system, born of atmospheric disturbances and the shifting of the Earth's magnetic fields. It is a breathing silence, a waiting silence. The operator shifts his weight in the chair. The wood of the chair creaks, a sharp, dry sound that cuts through the muffled atmosphere. He feels the cold seeping through the soles of his boots, numbing his toes. He wiggles them, a small, invisible motion to keep the blood flowing. The floorboards are freezing, separated from the frozen earth beneath by only a few inches of timber and air space. The cold is not an intruder here. It is the permanent resident. The warmth is the visitor, a temporary and fleeting condition that must be constantly maintained, constantly fed. He looks at the stove again. The red glow in the grate has dimmed. It is time to add more coal. The movement is slow, deliberate. There is no rush. There is nowhere to go, nothing to do but wait and keep the fire alive. He pushes the chair back, the legs scraping against the floor. He stands, his joints stiff, his knees popping audibly. The air at standing height is slightly warmer, gathered near the ceiling. But as he moves away from the desk, he steps out of the radiant heat of the stove and into the chill. He walks to the coal scuttle, a battered metal bucket sitting in the corner. The coal rattles as he scoops it up with a small iron shovel. The sound is harsh, clattering, metallic. He opens the stove door. A blast of heat escapes, flushing his face, smelling of sulfur and ash. The interior of the stove is a bed of glowing orange coals, a miniature landscape of intense, contained energy. He sprinkles the fresh coal onto the fire, careful not to smother it. The black lumps settle with a soft hiss. Smoke curls up, thick and gray, before being drawn up the flue by the draft. He closes the door, latching it with a heavy clank. He stands there for a moment, his hands held out towards the iron skin of the stove, absorbing the heat. His palms tingle as the warmth penetrates the wool of his gloves. He watches the firelight flickering through the grate, casting dancing shadows on the floorboards. The shadows are long and distorted, stretching and contracting with the rhythm of the flames. They look like dark water, rippling across the wood. The room feels smaller now, the walls closing in as the storm intensifies outside. The wind has changed pitch, rising to a higher, more piercing shriek. It batters the roof, sounding like gravel being thrown against the shingles. The entire building shudders, a subtle vibration that travels up through the soles of his boots. He turns back to the window. It is a square of blackness, the glass completely opaque with frost. The frost is thick, built up in layers, forming intricate, fern-like patterns that catch the lantern light. They are beautiful, these ice flowers, delicate and sharp, a testament to the brutal cold on the other side of the glass. He steps closer, leaning in to examine them. He can feel the cold radiating from the window, a wall of refrigerated air that pushes against his face. He brings his hand up, hovering at inches from the glass. He can feel the chill in his fingertips. If he were to touch it, his skin would stick. He breathes out, a long, slow exhalation. His breath plumes in the air, a cloud of white vapor that hangs for a moment before dissipating. It is cold enough inside that his own life force is visible, a fleeting ghost of warmth. He returns to the desk. The chair receives him with a familiar groan. He settles back into the posture of waiting, elbows on the wood, chin resting in his hands, eyes on the brass key. The waiting is the job. It is not about the sending of messages, not really. It is about being there. It is about keeping the line open. It is about being the human anchor at the end of the wire, the consciousness that validates the existence of the system. Without him, the wire is just metal in the snow. With him, it is a connection. He is the guardian of the circuit. The minutes drag by, extended and warped by the monotony. Time feels viscous here, thick like molasses. There is no clock on the wall, only a pocket watch that sits on the desk, its face pale in the lantern light. The second hand ticks around the dial, a jerky, mechanical motion that slices the silence into tiny, digestible pieces. Tick, tick, tick. He watches it for a while, mesmerizing himself with the repetition. Each tick is a second of the storm survived. Each tick is a second closer to the dawn, though dawn feels like a concept from another life, a theoretical event that has no bearing on the current reality of eternal night. He picks up a pencil, rolling it between his thumb and forefinger. The wood of the pencil is yellow, the paint chipped. The graphite tip is dull. He stares at the paper form in front of him. It is a blank telegram form lined with pale blue ink. Western Union, it says at the top in elegant scrolled lettering. Below that, spaces for received at, time, date, all empty, all waiting. The paper has a texture to it, a slight roughness that catches the light. It looks fragile, this piece of paper, too delicate for this harsh, frozen world. A single snowflake would soak it through. A gust of wind would carry it away into the void. Yet it sits there, anchored by the weight of the heavy iron stapler, ready to receive words from 1,000 miles away. The operator's eyes drift to the wall above the desk. There is a map pinned there, the corners curling. It is a map of the territory, a web of black lines representing the railroad tracks and the telegraph lines. The paper is yellowed with age, stained with fly specks and soot. He traces the line with his eyes. Here is the city, a dense knot of convergence in the south. Here is the junction, a splitting of the veins. And here, way up in the corner, a tiny black dot is this station. A speck, a nothingness. The map makes it look organized, connected. It reduces the hundreds of miles of wilderness to a few inches of paper. It lies. It does not show the mountains that loom over the tracks. It does not show the depth of the snow in the passes. It does not show the wind. It creates an illusion of control, of a world tamed by geometry and ink. But sitting here in the box of wood and shadow, the operator knows the truth. The map is a fantasy. The storm is the reality. A sudden gust of wind slams into the chimney, sending a puff of smoke back into the room through the stove grate. The smell of sulfur sharpens. The lantern swings more violently, casting wild, swinging shadows that chase each other around the walls. The operator does not flinch. He is used to the tantrums of the draft. He watches the smoke dissipate, thinning out into the gloom. The room settles again, but the air feels heavier, charged with the static of the blizzard. He wonders about the other operators down the line. Is the man at the junction awake? Is he sitting in a similar room, staring at a similar stove, listening to the same wind? Or has the line already gone down somewhere in the black gap between them? Maybe a tree has fallen, snapping the wire under its weight. Maybe the ice has become too heavy, dragging the poles down into the drifts. If the line is broken, he is truly alone. There would be no way to know. The silence of a broken line sounds exactly like the silence of an empty one. He reaches out and touches the key, his finger resting on the cool, hard rubber of the knob. He presses it down. Click. He releases it. Clack. The sound is sharp, crisp. The circuit is closed locally. The battery is working. But does the signal go anywhere? Does it travel out into the night, racing along the ice-coated wire, or does it die at the break, spilling uselessly into the snow? He taps out a simple sequence. Dot, dot, dot. The letter S a test. He waits. If the line is open, the sounder should echo the movement energized by the current flowing through the entire loop. Click-clack, click-clack, click-clack. The sounder responds. The arm snaps down and back up. The loop is intact. The signal traveled out, perhaps for miles, perhaps all the way to the next repeater station, and the circuit held. He lets out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. The wire is alive. The connection holds. He is not cut off, not yet. He pulls his hand back into the sleeve of his coat, seeking warmth. The brief contact with the key has leached the heat from his skin. The metal is a heat sink, hungry for warmth. He rubs his hands together, the dry sound of palm on palm filling the quiet. The friction creates a fleeting sensation of heat, gone as soon as he stops. He tucks his hands under his armpits, hugging himself. It is a pose of containment, of conserving every calorie. The visual landscape of the room is a study in muted tones. There are no bright colors here. Everything is a variation of brown, gray, and black, rendered in the soft, dusty texture of pastel chalks on dark paper. The walls are the color of cured tobacco. The floor is the color of charcoal. The stove is a deep, matte black. The only color comes from the fire, the amber of the lantern, the red of the coals, and even these are swallowed by the surrounding darkness, their edges soft and blurred. The light does not penetrate far. It merely suggests shapes in the gloom. The corners of the room are lost in deep shadow, areas where the light fails completely. In those corners, the cold seems to have a physical presence, a density that the light cannot pierce. The operator's gaze falls on the floor near the door. There is a line of white there, a thin drift of snow that has been forced under the doorframe by the pressure of the wind. It does not melt. It sits there, pristine and glittering, a stark white line against the dark wood. It is an invasion. The outside is coming in. He watches it, wondering if it will grow. If he sits here long enough, will the snow creep across the floor inch by inch until it reaches the stove? Will it bury his boots? He imagines the room filling with snow, a slow, silent burial. He imagines sitting there, still and calm, as the white powder rises around him, covering the desk, the key, the lamp, until everything is white and silent and cold. He shakes his head slightly, dispelling the thought. It is the boredom talking. It is the isolation playing tricks on the mind. He focuses on the grain of the desk again. He traces a knot in the wood with his eyes. It looks like an eye staring back at him. A dark, wooden eye. He blinks. The wind howls, a long, drawn-out moan that sounds like a wolf or a train whistle distorted by distance and atmosphere. But there are no trains tonight. Nothing is moving on the rails. The tracks are buried under feet of drift. The plows will not come until the storm breaks, and the storm shows no sign of breaking. He reaches for the coffee pot that sits on the back of the stove. It is an enamel pot, blue with white speckles chipped at the spout. He wraps his gloved hand around the handle. It is hot but not burning. He lifts it. It feels light, nearly empty. He pours the remaining liquid into a tin cup. The coffee is thick, black, and sludge-like. It steams aggressively in the cold air. He holds the cup in both hands, letting the heat transfer to his palms. He brings it to his lips. The metal rim is hot. The coffee is bitter, tasting of burnt grounds and metal. He takes a small sip. It scalds his tongue, a sharp, sudden pain that is almost welcome in the numbness. He swallows. The heat travels down his throat, a warm line tracing the path to his stomach. It is a small internal fire to match the external one. He sets the cup down. The steam rises in a lazy spiral, twisting and turning as it ascends towards the lantern. He watches the steam dissipate, vanishing into the shadows of the rafters. The rafters are heavy beams of rough-hewn timber, crossed and interlocked. Spider webs drape in the corners, thick with dust, swaying in the drafts. The spiders are gone, sleeping or dead, frozen in the crevices. Only the webs remain, gray garlands of abandonment. The silence returns, filling the space left by the swallow of coffee. It is a heavy silence, a presence that presses against the eardrums. It is the silence of the deep winter, the silence of a world suspended in ice. The operator leans back, the chair creaking again. He closes his eyes for a moment. The darkness behind his eyelids is no different from the darkness of the room. He sees the afterimage of the lantern flame, a floating orange spot that drifts across his vision. He listens. Wind, creaking wood. The settle of coal, the beat of his own heart, slow and steady. Thump, thump, thump. It is the only clock that matters. He opens his eyes. The room is unchanged. The frost on the window is perhaps a fraction of an inch thicker. The line of snow under the door is perhaps a millimeter wider. The night is a vast, stagnant ocean, and he is drifting in the center of it in a small wooden boat that is slowly taking on water. But the wire is open. The key is ready. The line is clear. He is the operator. He is the keeper of the line. And he will sit here in the cold and the dark until the sun rises or the world ends, whichever comes first. He looks at the key. The brass gleams dully. Waiting, always waiting. The wind rises again, a crescendo of fury that shakes the walls, rattling the window pane in its frame. The operator does not move. He simply breathes, a puff of white fog in the dim light, and waits for the next second to tick by. The wind does not breathe. It pushes. It is a solid, unending force that leans against the north wall of the station with the weight of a glacier. The wooden planks, rough sawn and aged to the color of dried tobacco, groan under the pressure. It is a sound of strain, a low-frequency complaint of timber fibers being compressed, of old nails biting into dry wood. Inside the room, the sound is muffled, stripped of its sharpest edges, transformed into a dull, throbbing vibration that is felt in the teeth and the bones as much as it is heard. The operator can feel the wall shuddering when he leans his shoulder against the heavy oak of the desk. The station is a small, hollow cavity carved out of the storm, a bubble of air that exists only by the grace of stubborn carpentry and the friction of nails. The air in the room has stratified, settling into distinct layers of temperature. Near the ceiling, where the heat from the stove pools in a stagnant cloud, it is almost warm, a dry, dusty warmth that smells of cobwebs and heated iron. At the level of the operator's head, the air is tepid, a neutral zone where the heat fights a losing battle against the drafts. But at the floor, around the legs of the chair and the heavy, iron-shod boots, the air is arctic. It flows across the floorboards like a liquid, a heavy, invisible stream of cold that pours from the cracks under the door and the gaps in the window frame. It is a cold that seeks out the smallest weakness in the clothing, a needle-sharp chill that finds the gap between the sock and the pant cuff, the space between the glove and the sleeve. The operator moves his feet, a slow, shuffling motion inside the boots. The leather is stiff, frozen into the shape of his foot. The soles are hard and unyielding. He creates a small friction, a tiny, desperate generation of heat that dissipates the moment he stops moving. He pulls his coat tighter, rearranging the folds of the heavy wool. The coat is his shell, his personal fortification. It is old, the weave tight and matted, stained with the grease of the railway and the soot of the coal scuttle. It weighs heavily on his shoulders, a comforting burden. The collar, turned up high, scrapes against his ears, the rough fabric a tactile reminder of his insulation. He looks away from the window, turning his gaze to the shelf on the side wall, hidden in the deeper shadows of the room. Here, arranged in a precise, dusty row, sit the batteries. They are the lungs of the telegraph, the silent chemical engines that breathe life into the wire. They are gravity cells, heavy glass jars filled with liquids of varying densities. The operator knows them intimately. He knows the weight of them, the smell of them, the slow, corrosive alchemy that takes place inside the glass. In the dim light of the lantern, they gleam with a dull, sinister beauty. The bottom of each jar is filled with a solution of copper sulfate, a deep, vibrant blue that looks like liquefied gemstone. It is the only real color in the room, a shocking, unnatural blue that seems to glow with its own internal light. Floating on top of the blue is a layer of zinc sulfate, clear and oily, separating the copper from the zinc electrode that hangs from the rim of the jar like a crow's foot. He stares at the jars, mesmerized by their stillness. They do not move. They do not make a sound. Yet within them a silent war is being waged, ions migrating through the liquid, metal dissolving and depositing, a slow, relentless exchange of energy that generates the current. It is a slow-motion consumption, a chemical fire that burns without flame. He watches the line of separation between the blue and the clear liquids. It must be maintained. If the blue rises too high, it will foul the zinc. If it sinks too low, the current will fail. It is a delicate balance maintained by gravity and stillness. The storm outside rages with chaotic violence, but here on the shelf, the physics of the battery demands absolute calm. The operator respects the batteries. He respects their silence. They are like him, stationary, filled with potential, slowly consuming themselves to keep the line open. He stands up again, the chair scraping its familiar protest. He needs to check the connections. It is a ritual, a way to break the monotony, a way to convince himself that he is doing something useful. He walks to the shelf, his boots thumping heavily on the hollow floor. The sound echoes in the small space, flat and dead. He reaches out and touches the copper wire that snakes from the first battery. It is cold, the insulation brittle. He traces the path of the wire from jar to jar, checking the binding posts, the brass screws that hold the circuit together. He gives each screw a gentle twist with his fingers. They are tight. The metal is cold and greasy to the touch. The smell of the chemicals is stronger here, a sharp, metallic tang that sits in the back of the nose, tasting of copper and acid. He leans in close to one of the jars. The glass is covered in a fine layer of dust. He wipes a small circle clean with his gloved thumb. Through the clear patch, he can see the zinc crow's foot, eaten away by the reaction, its edges ragged and dark. It looks like a piece of decaying coral suspended in the clear liquid. Bubbles, tiny and motionless, cling to the side of the glass. Nothing moves. It is a still life of industrial chemistry, frozen in time. He checks the level of the blue vitriol. It is steady. The battery is healthy. It is doing its work in the dark, pushing the invisible stream of electrons out through the wall, up the pole, and into the screaming wind. He turns away from the shelf, satisfied or at least occupied for a moment. He walks back towards the stove, drawn by the gravitational pull of the heat. The stove is a sullen companion. It demands constant attention. If he ignores it for too long, it sulks, the fire dying down to a bed of useless ash. If he feeds it too much, it roars and overheats, threatening to crack its own iron skin or set the chimney alight. It is a temperamental beast, requiring a steady, measured hand. He picks up the poker, a long rod of blackened iron with a hooked end. He inserts it through the grate, feeling for the clinkers, the fused masses of impurities that clog the airflow. He rakes the coals gently. The sound is a harsh, rasping scrape, iron on iron, stone on stone. Sparks fly up inside the firebox, swirling in the draft, brief constellations of orange that live for a second and then turn to gray ash. He watches the sparks. They remind him of the sparks from the locomotive wheels when they lock on the rails, showers of burning metal that trail behind the train in the night. But there are no trains. The tracks are silent. The steel rails are buried under feet of snow, insulated, hidden. The world of steel and steam has been paused, put on hold by the white silence. He withdraws the poker and hangs it back on its hook. It swings slightly, chiming against the side of the stove. Cling, cling, a lonely sound. He stands with his back to the stove, letting the heat soak into his coat. He looks around the room, seeing it not as a place of work, but as a collection of textures. The rough grain of the wall logs, the smooth, worn varnish of the desk, the dull, pitted iron of the stove, the glass of the window, opaque and crystalline. It is a drawing in charcoal and sepia, a study in shadows. The light from the lantern does not illuminate the room so much as it pushes the darkness back into the corners. The shadows are heavy, almost liquid. They seem to pool on the floor, to drip from the rafters. The operator feels the weight of the shadows. They are pressing in, narrowing his world. He looks at the telegraph key again. It is the focal point of the room, the reason for the room's existence. It sits on the desk like a small brass altar. He walks over to it, drawn by the potential of communication. He sits down, the leather of the chair creaking, cold against his back. He places his hand on the desk, near the key, but not touching it. He waits. The sounder is silent. The arm is up. The magnets are energized, holding the armature in place, but there is no modulation, no message. Just the steady, silent flow of the closed circuit. He closes his eyes and listens to the wire. He cannot hear the wire itself, of course, but he can hear the wind singing in the insulators outside. It is a high-pitched hum, a vibration that travels through the wood of the station. It sounds like a choir of ghosts, a discordant harmonic wail that rises and falls with the gusts. Hum-mum, hum-ah-ah. It is the voice of the storm, translated through glass and iron. He imagines the wire out there, a thin line of copper stretching across the void. He sees the poles, each one a lonely island in the snow. He sees the insulators' green glass bells capped with white hats of snow. He sees the wire sagging, heavy with ice, swinging in the gale. It is a fragile thing, this connection. A single branch, a single weakness in the metal, and the line will snap, curling back on itself like a whip. And then the sounder will go dead. The arm will release. The silence will change from a waiting silence to a dead silence. But for now it holds. The hum continues. He opens his eyes. The room is the same. The lantern flickers. The shadows dance. He picks up a pen, dipping the nib into the inkwell. The ink is thick, almost gelatinous in the cold. He holds the pen over a scrap of paper. He writes nothing. He just watches the ink glisten on the nib, a black drop of liquid potential. He watches it dry, turning from a glossy bead to a dull, flat stain. He wipes the nib on a piece of rag, the black ink smearing on the gray cloth. Even the act of cleaning the pen is slow, deliberate. There is no hurry. There is endless time. He looks at the map on the wall again. He traces the route of the track to the west. It goes into the mountains, into the high passes where the snow is deep enough to bury a train. He thinks of the snow sheds, those long wooden tunnels built over the tracks to protect them from avalanches. They are dark, smoky places, echoing with the sound of dripping water. He imagines a train stuck in a shed, the engine idling, the passengers huddled in the cars, waiting like him. But there is no train. The pass is blocked, the plows are grounded, the world has stopped. The operator leans forward, resting his elbows on the desk. He puts his face in his hands. His skin is rough, dry. The stubble on his chin scratches his palms. He smells the soap on his hands, a faint lye scent that is almost lost under the smell of coal and wool. He presses his palms against his eyes, creating a kaleidoscope of phosphenes, swirling patterns of light and dark that mimic the storm outside. He stays like that for a long time, listening to the wind, feeling the floor tremble. He is a statue of fatigue, a monument to endurance. When he lowers his hands, the room seems darker. The lantern flame has dipped. The oil is low. He will have to refill it soon. Another task, another small battle against the entropy of the night. He looks at the window. The frost has advanced. The clear patches are gone. The glass is now a solid sheet of white, a topographical map of ice. The ridges and valleys of the frost catch the light, glittering with a cold, hard brilliance. It is a beautiful barrier, a wall of diamond dust that separates the warm, smoky air of the station from the lethal vacuum outside. He feels a strange affection for the frost. It is a blanket in its own way. It hides the terrifying emptiness of the landscape. It turns the window into a canvas, a constantly changing artwork of crystallization. He shivers. The cold has found a way in. It has seeped through the layers of wool and cotton, touching the skin of his back. He hunches his shoulders, trying to minimize his surface area. He thinks of the summer. He tries to remember the sensation of heat, of the sun beating down on the station roof, of the smell of hot tar and pine resin. He tries to conjure the image of the green hills, the dust rising from the road, the buzz of insects in the tall grass. But the memories are faint, washed out. They feel like stories he read in a book, not things he actually experienced. The reality of the cold is too absolute. It erases the past and the future, leaving only the frozen present. He looks at the coal scuttle. It is half empty. He calculates the remaining hours of the night against the volume of coal. It will be close. He will have to be careful. He will have to let the fire burn low, banking it with ash to make the coal last. It is a dangerous game. If the fire dies, the cold will rush in like a flood. The water in the kettle will freeze. The ink will freeze. The batteries will freeze, the glass jars cracking as the liquid expands, spilling the blue poison onto the floor. And he will have to keep moving to keep his blood from thickening. He pushes the thought away. The coal will last. It has to. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a handkerchief. It is a square of gray cotton, soft and worn. He wipes his nose. The air is so dry that his sinuses ache. He folds the handkerchief carefully, matching corner to corner, and puts it back in his pocket. Every movement is a ceremony. Every action is filled with weight. The wind outside shifts direction, slamming against the door now. The latch rattles, a metallic chatter that sounds like teeth chattering. The door holds. It is a heavy door, built of oak planks 2 inches thick, reinforced with iron straps. But it shudders in the frame, bowing slightly inward under the force of the gust. A puff of fine snow, like powdered sugar, sprays through the crack at the bottom, skittering across the floorboards. It stops a few feet into the room, a white fan shape on the dark wood. The operator watches the snow. It does not melt. The floor is too cold. The snow sits there, an intruder from the other side. He decides to leave it. It is a gauge. As long as it stays frozen, he knows the floor is freezing. If it starts to melt, it means the room is warming up or the heat is reaching the floor. He suspects it will stay frozen. He pulls his feet back, tucking them under the chair, away from the draft. He glances at the sounder again, still silent. The brass is dull, unpolished. It absorbs the light rather than reflecting it. He wonders if the operator at the other end is watching his sounder too. Is there a connection of minds across the wire, a shared vigil? Or is the other man asleep, head on his arms, the fire burning low? It doesn't matter. The duty is solitary. The responsibility is individual. He is the guardian of his own section of the line. He picks up a manual from the corner of the desk. Regulations for the telegraph department. The cover is stiff, cardboard wrapped in cloth. He opens it at random. The pages are brittle, yellowed at the edges. He reads a paragraph without really taking in the words. Batteries must be kept clean and free from crystals. Zincs must be scraped. Connections must be tight. The words are dry, technical, devoid of humanity. They are instructions for a machine, written by men in warm offices in the city. They do not mention the cold. They do not mention the wind. They do not mention the silence that stretches for hours, turning the mind inward. He closes the book. It offers no comfort. It belongs to the world of order and schedules, a world that has no place here tonight. He looks at the lantern. The flame is a small, dancing spirit. It is the only thing in the room that is truly alive. It consumes oxygen and oil. It moves. It gives off heat. It is a companion. He watches the soot building up on the glass chimney of the lamp, a black smudge near the top. He should clean it, but not now. To clean it, he would have to turn the flame down, let the glass cool. He cannot afford to lose the light even for a moment. The darkness is waiting, pressing against the edges of the light, eager to rush in and swallow the room. The light must stay. He leans back, the chair groaning its wooden complaint. He clasps his hands over his stomach. He feels the slow, rhythmic rise and fall of his breath. He is a machine of biology burning food to create heat, just as the stove burns coal. He is a part of the system. The wind, the snow, the wire, the stove, the man. All interconnected components of a vast, frozen machine. He listens to the wind again. It has dropped a fraction of an octave, becoming a deeper, more resonant roar. It sounds like the earth itself is groaning. The snow hits the window with a sound like sand. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The layers of frost thicken. The world outside is being erased, buried, sealed away. There is only the room. There is only the desk, the key, the stove. The operator closes his eyes again, sinking into the hypnotic rhythm of the storm. He is not asleep. He is in a state of suspended animation, a trance of waiting. He is the telegraph operator. He is keeping the line open. And the night stretches on, a dark, frozen tunnel with no end in sight. The seconds tick by on the pocket watch, audible only in the brief pauses between the gusts of wind. Tick, tick, tick. Each one a small victory, each one a small step through the infinite dark. He opens his eyes, he looks at the key. He reaches out a finger and rests it on the cold button. He does not press it. He just holds it there, feeling the connection, feeling the potential. The wire hums. The wind howls. The cold creeps across the floor. He sits. He waits. The flame of the lantern is a prisoner behind the glass, a small, nervous entity that twitches and bows in response to the unseen currents of air that traverse the room. It is the only source of animation in a tableau composed entirely of stillness and shadow. The operator watches the flame, his eyes following its frantic minute movements. It is a tear in the fabric of the dark, a hole through which a dirty, yellow light bleeds into the world. The light is not pure. It is tinged with the smoke of the kerosene, a heavy, greasy illumination that seems to coat the objects in the room with a film of age. On the walls, the light struggles to gain purchase, absorbed by the rough texture of the logs and the deep, swallowing darkness that lurks in the grain of the wood. The room feels like a drawing where the artist has pressed too hard with the charcoal, filling the background with a dense, impenetrable black, leaving only the center of the page smudged with faint ochre and burnt sienna. The operator's eyes feel gritty, as if the dust from the coal has settled under his eyelids. He blinks slowly, a heavy, deliberate closure that shuts out the room for a second, 2 seconds, 3. In that brief darkness, the sound of the wind magnifies. It is no longer just a noise. It is a vibration that travels through the skull, a resonant frequency that matches the timbre of the station. The station is a wooden box adrift in a white ocean, and the ocean is angry. The wind does not just blow, it scours. It strips the world bare. He can hear the granular impact of the snow against the north wall, a sound like thousands of tiny needles striking the wood. Tick, 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 hiss. It is a relentless abrasion, a slow motion sanding down of the structure. He opens his eyes. The room returns unchanged, indifferent. He shifts his gaze to the window frame. The frost has conquered the glass completely, but now it is attacking the wood. A fine white powder has appeared on the inner sill, a tiny dune of snow that has managed to squeeze through a microscopic gap between the frame and the sash. It is a breach. The enemy has entered the perimeter. The operator stares at this small intrusion. It is beautiful in a clinical way, a perfect, glittering formation of ice crystals that sparkles in the lantern light. But it is also a threat. It represents the failure of the seal, the persistence of the cold. He knows he must address it. The decision to move forms slowly in his mind, rising through layers of lethargy like a bubble in thick oil. He does not spring into action. He lets the idea of movement settle, lets his muscles anticipate the effort. Finally, he pushes his hands against the desk, feeling the cold varnish against his palms. He levers himself up, his knees cracking with a sound like dry twigs snapping. The chair slides back, the noise of its legs on the floorboards harsh and intrusive. He stands for a moment, steadying himself. The circulation in his legs is sluggish. His feet feel like blocks of wood, distant and numb. He stamps them gently, a muffled thud-thud that barely echoes. He walks towards the corner of the room where a pile of old rags is kept. These are the remnants of old shirts, torn trousers, oil-stained cloths used for cleaning the machinery. They are stiff with grime and cold, smelling of stale sweat and machine oil. He sorts through them, his gloved fingers clumsy. He selects a strip of gray flannel, the fabric thick and coarse. It was once a shirt, perhaps worn in a summer years ago, but now it is just material, a tool for insulation. He carries the rag to the window. As he approaches, the temperature drops. It is a palpable gradient, a cliff edge of thermal loss. 2 feet from the window, the air is chilly. 1 foot from the window, it is freezing. At the sill itself, the air is a solid wall of ice. He can feel the draft now, a razor-thin stream of air cutting through the gap. It hits his face like a physical blow, numbing the skin on his cheek instantly. He leans in, squinting against the invisible knife. He presses the rag into the crack, using the edge of his thumb to wedge it deep. The fabric resists, then yields, disappearing into the seam. He works his way along the sill, pushing, tucking, sealing. The draft is stifled. The hiss of the air stops. The silence of the room deepens, reclaiming the space. He stands back, examining his handiwork. It is a crude repair, a gray bandage on the wooden wound, but it will hold. For tonight, it will hold. He rubs his cheek, trying to bring the feeling back. The skin feels like parchment, dry and papery. He turns away from the window, the cold clinging to the front of his coat like a second skin. He walks back towards the stove, the center of gravity in this small universe. The stove is black, brooding, a cast-iron idol that demands worship in the form of combustible carbon. The operator picks up the poker again. He needs to check the fire, not because it needs fuel yet, but because he needs the reassurance of the flame. He opens the door. The heat that spills out is less aggressive now, a softer, mellower warmth. The coal has burned down to a deep, pulsing red, a bed of embers that looks like the surface of a dying star. There are no flames, just the intense, radiating glow of the consumed carbon. It is a clean heat, a quiet heat. He watches the embers pulse. They brighten slightly as the draft catches them, then dim as the air settles. It is a slow, respiratory rhythm. Breathe in, glow. Breathe out, dim. He closes the door, latching it securely. The click of the metal latch is sharp, a punctuation mark in the sentence of the night. He places the poker back on its hook. He looks at the coal scuttle. He counts the lumps with his eyes. 1, 2, 3 large ones, a scattering of smaller pieces, dust at the bottom. It is a finite resource. Every lump he burns is gone forever, transformed into heat and ash and smoke that is carried away by the wind. He must be a miser. He must hoard the warmth. He returns to the desk, but he does not sit. He stands behind the chair, his hands gripping the backrest. The wood of the chair is smooth, polished by years of handling. He runs his thumb along the top rail, feeling the imperfections, the small dents and scratches that map the history of the station. How many operators have stood here? How many hands have gripped this chair? He feels a ghostly connection to those other men, a lineage of watchers who have stood guard against the silence. They are all here, present in the worn varnish, in the smell of the room, in the layers of soot on the ceiling. He looks up at the ceiling. The rafters are lost in the gloom, but he knows they are there, heavy beams of pine that hold the roof against the weight of the snow. The snow must be deep up there now. He imagines the roof groaning under the load, the shingles buried under feet of white powder. The station is slowly being submerged. If the storm continues for another day, perhaps the windows will be covered. The room will become a tomb, sealed off from the light of day, existing in a perpetual, artificial night. The thought is not frightening. It is merely a logical extrapolation of the current conditions. It is a geometry of snow and time. His gaze drops to the logbook lying open on the desk. It is a large ledger bound in canvas, the corners battered. The pages are ruled with blue and red lines, a grid for recording the orderly flow of commerce. But the page for today is largely empty. A few entries from the morning before the storm closed in completely. 0800 line clear. 0930 freight 4 passed westbound. 10:15 wind rising, snow commencing. Since then, nothing. A long, blank expanse of white paper, waiting for events that have not happened. The emptiness of the page mirrors the emptiness of the world outside. There is no news. There is no movement. There is only the static state of the storm. He picks up the pen. He feels a compulsion to mark the page to prove that time is still passing. He dips the nib in the ink. He hovers his hand over the paper. The shadow of the pen falls across the lines. What to write? Still storming. Wind high, it is redundant. The logbook is for facts, for the movement of trains, for the status of the line. It is not a diary of the weather, but he writes anyway. In small, precise handwriting, he notes the time. 0200. And next to it he writes, "Station secure. Line holds, temp falling. The ink shines wetly on the paper, distinct and sharp against the soft texture of the page. He watches it dry. The act of writing anchors him. It asserts his presence. I am here. I am recording. He puts the pen down. The sound of the pen hitting the wood is a tiny clatter. He looks at the telegraph key. It is the bridge. It is the way out. He resists the urge to tap it again. He must not clog the line with useless signals. Someone somewhere might be listening, waiting for a real message. A distress call, a plow order. If he is chattering on the key, he might miss the break, the call for help. He must maintain the silence. The silence is part of the discipline. He sits down, lowering himself into the chair with a heavy sigh. The leather cushion is cold and hard. He adjusts his coat, pulling the flaps over his knees. He creates a tent of wool, trapping his body heat. He tucks his hands into his armpits again, the pose of the statue. He fixes his eyes on the sounder, the brass lever, the coils of wire wrapped in black fabric, the wooden base. It is a simple machine, crude by the standards of the modern cities, but here it is a marvel. It is the voice of the electric fluid, the tongue of the lightning. He lets his mind wander out along the wire again. He travels with it, leaving the station, passing through the wall, out into the blizzard. He imagines himself as a spark, traveling along the copper. He flies over the frozen creek, where the water is locked under thick slabs of gray ice. He flies through the ravine, where the wind funnels and screams, stripping the bark from the trees. He flies past the mile markers, buried in the drifts. He sees the world from the perspective of the wire, a long, continuous line of tension suspended above the chaos. The wire does not feel the cold. It only conducts. It is pure purpose. He wonders if the wire hums differently when it is this cold. Does the conductivity change? Does the metal contract, singing a higher note? He imagines the copper atoms huddled together, shivering, passing the electrons hand to hand like buckets of water in a fire brigade. Hurry, hurry, keep moving. The signal must go through. The thought is whimsical, a product of a tired mind, but it occupies him. It passes the time. The wind outside shifts again, veering to the northeast. The sound changes from a roar to a moan, a long, mournful sound that rises and falls like a siren. It is the sound of something vast and in pain. The station shudders in sympathy. A timber in the roof cracks, a sharp pistol-shot sound that makes the operator blink, but he does not startle. The wood is adjusting. It is shrinking in the cold, settling under the load. It is the house talking to itself. He listens to the echoes of the crack, fading into the corners of the room. He looks at the shadows on the floor. They have moved slightly. The lantern has burned down a fraction of an inch. The angle of the light has shifted. The shadow of the stove leg has lengthened, stretching out towards the door like a dark finger. He watches the shadow. It seems to tremble. Is it the lantern flickering, or is it his own eyes vibrating with fatigue? He stares harder. The shadow is still. It is the light that is unstable. The flame is struggling against the draft that still manages to stir the air in the room, despite his efforts with the rag. The air is never truly still. It is always moving, always seeking equilibrium, always trying to mix the cold with the warm. He feels a thirst, not a sharp thirst, but a dry, dusty coating in his mouth. The air is so dry it sucks the moisture from his skin, from his lungs. He looks at the coffee pot. It is cold now. To drink it would be to drink sludge. He decides against it. He will wait. He will wait until he needs to stoke the fire, and then he will heat the water. Efficiency. Everything must be synchronized. The stoking of the fire, the heating of the water, the warming of the body. He cannot afford to waste the heat of the stove on a single cup of coffee if the fire does not need tending. He runs his tongue over his lips. They are chapped rough. He tastes salt. He wonders how long he has been sitting here. The watch says it is past 2:00 a.m., but the watch is just a machine. It measures a mechanical interval. It does not measure the true duration of the night. This night has lasted for weeks. It has lasted for years. The sun is a myth. The day is a legend. There is only this room, this circle of lantern light, and the endless howling dark. He leans his head back against the chair. The wood presses into his skull. He stares up into the darkness of the rafters again. He can see the faint outline of a spiderweb swaying in the thermal current rising from the stove. It is a gray ghost of a web laden with dust. It moves back and forth, a hypnotist's pendulum. Left, right, he follows the motion. It is soothing. It lulls the mind. It suggests sleep. But he cannot sleep. The regulations forbid it. The safety of the line forbids it. He must remain conscious. He must remain the watcher. He forces his head forward, breaking the trance. He shakes his head, a quick, sharp motion to rattle the brain awake. He rubs his face with his gloved hands. The wool is rough, abrasive. It scrubs the skin, bringing blood to the surface. He feels a prickle of heat in his cheeks. That is better. He is awake. He is alert. He looks at the batteries on the shelf again. The blue liquid is still there, glowing faintly. The silent engines. He wonders if they will freeze. If the temperature drops another 10 degrees, will the chemistry stop? Will the ions cease to flow? He has heard stories of stations in the far north where the mercury froze in the thermometer, where the oil in the lamps turned to jelly, where the batteries shattered. He is not that far north. But tonight, it feels like the pole has moved. It feels like the ice cap has slid down the map to swallow this valley. He gets up again. The sitting is the enemy. The blood pools. The mind stagnates. He must move. He paces the room. It is a short journey. 4 paces from the desk to the stove. 3 paces from the stove to the window. Turn, repeat. Thud, 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 thud. His boots strike the floor with a rhythmic heaviness. He walks with his hands behind his back, head down like a prisoner in a cell, which he is. He is a prisoner of the weather, a prisoner of his duty. He passes the stove. He feels the wave of heat. He passes the window. He feels the wave of cold. It is a cycle of thermal shock. Heat, cold, heat, cold. He does this 10 times, 20 times. He counts the laps. It is something to do. It keeps the blood moving. It keeps the joints from locking up. On the 25th lap, he stops at the window. He scrapes a tiny peephole in the frost with his fingernail. He puts his eye to the glass. Blackness, absolute swirling blackness. He can see nothing. No trees, no tracks, no poles, just the white streaks of snow flying past the glass, illuminated for a fraction of a second by the light escaping from the room. It is like looking into a warp-speed tunnel, a blur of motion. The snow is moving horizontally, driven by a wind that has not slackened. There is no comfort out there, no sign of abatement. The world is being erased. He turns back to the room. It looks smaller now. The walls seem to have moved in. The ceiling seems lower. The shadows are gathering, thickening. He feels a sudden, irrational spike of fear. What if the walls collapse? What if the snow crushes the roof? What if he is buried here, preserved in the ice like a prehistoric insect? He forces the breath out of his lungs. Whoosh. He pushes the fear down. It is the isolation. It is the lack of sleep. He is rational. He is the operator. The station is strong. It has stood for 20 years. It will stand tonight. He walks back to the desk. He touches the telegraph key. The metal is smooth, familiar. It is his anchor. As long as the line is open, he is connected to the world of men. He is not lost. He sits down. He adjusts the coat. He watches the sounder. He waits. The wind howls. The house creaks. The lantern flickers. The night goes on. The texture of the darkness in the corners of the room is grainy, like charcoal dust rubbed into the paper. It is not a flat black, but a deep, vibrating gray that seems to contain movement. The operator watches the corner near the door. He imagines shapes in the shadows. He sees the form of a man standing there watching him. A traveler lost in the snow, come in for warmth. No, there is no one. It is a trick of the light. It is the pareidolia of loneliness. He blinks and the shape resolves back into a coat hook and a broom handle. Just objects, just wood and metal. He sighs. The sound is loud in the room. He listens to the fading of his own breath. He looks at his hands. They are large, capable hands, but they look useless now, resting on the desk. They have nothing to do. They are waiting for a command that does not come. He flexes his fingers, watching the tendons move under the skin. Open, close, mechanical biology. He thinks about the coal again. He calculates the burn rate if he adds 2 lumps every hour. Will it last until dawn? When is dawn? In this storm, dawn might be just a slight lightening of the gray, a subtle shift from charcoal to slate. It might not bring warmth. It might not bring the sun. It might just be a change in the shade of the gloom, but it will be something. It will be a marker. He longs for it. He yearns for the gray light of morning. Until then, he has the lantern. He has the stove. He has the wire. He settles deeper into the chair. He lowers his chin to his chest. He listens. He waits. The silence of the wire is a heavy thing, a burden that sits on his shoulders, but he carries it. He keeps the line open. He is the operator. The wind has settled into a rhythmic, droning monologue, a low-pitched vibration that seems to emanate from the earth itself rather than the air. It is a bass note, steady and relentless, that reverberates through the floorboards and travels up the legs of the chair, entering the operator's spine as a subtle, numbing tremor. The station, a small, defiant cube of joinery and iron, sits within this sonic landscape like a stone at the bottom of a rushing river. The air around it is turbulent, chaotic, stripping the heat from the wood. But inside, the air is heavy and still, stratified by the relentless laws of thermodynamics. The operator sits at the boundary of these two worlds, the chaotic outer cold and the fragile inner warmth, a solitary figure rendered in shades of deep indigo and charcoal against the dim, amber wash of the lantern light. He stares at the paperweight on the desk. It is a heavy glass sphere, the bottom flattened to sit stable on the wood. Inside the glass, trapped in a frozen moment of manufacture, is a swirl of blue and white pigment, a suspended storm that mimics the one raging outside. He reaches out and touches it. The glass is intensely cold. It sucks the heat from his fingertip instantly, a sharp, biting sensation that travels up his nerve endings. He withdraws his hand, rubbing the fingertip against the rough wool of his coat. The paperweight remains, a cold, unblinking eye staring up at the ceiling. It is an object of pure density, anchoring the papers beneath it against the drafts that occasionally flutter through the room. The papers are forms, schedules, regulations. They are the bureaucracy of the railroad, reduced to thin sheets of wood pulp. The edges of the top sheet are curling slightly, reacting to the dryness of the air. The operator flattens it with his hand, smoothing the paper down. It feels brittle, dry, as if it might shatter rather than tear. The ink on the page is black and precise, a testament to a world of order and schedules that feels impossibly distant tonight. Train number 4 due 10:00 p.m. Freight number 7 due 11:30 p.m. These are ghosts. These are theoretical events that have been erased by the reality of the snow. There are no trains. There is no schedule. There is only the duration of the storm. He looks at the inkwell. It is a small, faceted glass bottle with a bakelite cap, The ink inside is black, a pool of liquid night. He wonders if it is thickening. He unscrews the cap. The threads are stiff. He tilts the bottle slightly. The ink moves sluggishly, coating the side of the glass with a heavy, viscous film. It is like oil. It is resisting the cold, but barely. If the fire dies, the ink will be the first to freeze, expanding and cracking the glass, spilling a black stain across the desk that will freeze into a dark, permanent scar. He screws the cap back on, twisting it tight. He is sealing a small vessel of darkness against the greater darkness. The stove demands attention. It is a silent demand, felt rather than heard. The heat radiating from the iron cylinder has lessened, the circle of warmth shrinking towards the center of the room. The operator feels the chill creeping up his back, a subtle invasion of the cold air that hangs in the corners. He pushes the chair back. The scrape of the wooden legs on the floor is a harsh, dry sound like a file being dragged across stone. He stands, his body unfolding slowly, stiffness in every joint. The cold air at floor level washes over his boots, a tide of freezing vapor. He walks to the coal scuttle. The metal bucket is a dull gray, battered and dented. The coal inside glitters faintly in the lantern light, black diamonds of fossilized energy. He picks up the shovel. It is light in his hand, the handle worn smooth by years of use. He opens the stove door. The latch is hot to the touch, transmitting the internal heat of the firebox. He swings the door open. The interior is a landscape of glowing red terrain, the coals pulsing with a slow, rhythmic light. It is a dying landscape. The bright orange peaks have subsided into dull red valleys. Ash, gray and flaky, coats the sides of the firebox. He slides the shovel into the scuttle, the metal scraping against the coal. He lifts a scoop of black lumps. He pauses, holding the shovel suspended. He is weighing the fuel. He is calculating the cost. This shovelful represents an hour of heat, maybe 2 if he banks it correctly. He tilts the shovel, letting the coal slide into the fire. The lumps fall with a muffled thud, settling into the bed of embers. Sparks fly up, swirling in the draft, tiny orange comets that burn out before they reach the flue. He adds a second scoop, then a third. He stops. That is enough. He must be prudent. He uses the poker to arrange the new coal, spreading it evenly over the red base. The fresh fuel begins to smoke, thin gray tendrils curling up as the volatile gases are released. Soon they will catch, and the blue flames will dance. He closes the door. The latch clicks. The fire is fed. The beast is pacified. He stands before the stove, extending his hands towards the black iron. The heat is immediate, a wave of thermal energy that penetrates the gloves and warms the skin. He closes his eyes, savoring the sensation. It is the only luxury he has. The heat is life. It is the barrier that keeps his blood liquid, his heart pumping. He stands there for a long time, rotating his hands, warming the palms, then the backs, then the wrists. He feels the heat soaking into the heavy wool of his coat, charging the fibers with warmth that he will carry back to the desk. Behind him, the room waits. The shadows in the corners seem to have deepened, the charcoal tones of the walls merging with the black void of the unlit spaces. The lantern swings gently, driven by the thermal currents rising from the freshly stoked stove. The shadows of the rafters move across the ceiling, long, dark bars that slide back and forth like the pendulum of a giant, slow clock. The operator opens his eyes and watches the shadows. They are hypnotic. They mark the passage of time without numbers, a visual rhythm of the night. He turns his attention to the coffee pot. It sits on the back of the stove, a dark, enameled shape. He touches the side with a gloved finger. It is warm but not hot. The coffee inside has likely separated, the ground settling into a sludge at the bottom. He slides the pot forward, moving it directly over the firebox. He hears the liquid shift inside. He will wait for it to boil. It is a small event to look forward to. The anticipation of the boil, the steam, the pour, it breaks the monotony. He leans against the wall near the stove. The logs are warm here, absorbing the heat. He can feel the texture of the wood through his coat, the rough bark, the smooth, adzed surface of the timber. The station is built of these trees, harvested from the surrounding hills years ago. They are old witnesses. They have stood against blizzards before. They are standing now. He feels a kinship with the wood. It is dead, yet it protects the living. The sound of the wind changes again. It shifts from a drone to a high, whistling shriek, a sound produced by the air being forced through a narrow gap in the eaves or around the chimney pot. Wee-yee. It is a piercing, needle-like sound that cuts through the lower rumble. The operator looks up at the ceiling, trying to locate the source. It moves, panning across the roof as the wind direction fluctuates. It sounds like a signal, a high-frequency transmission from the storm itself, but there is no code in it. It is random, chaotic noise. He looks back at the coffee pot. A wisp of steam is escaping from the spout. It rises straight up, then curls and dissipates as it hits the cooler air. He watches the steam. It is white, ghostly against the dark background of the wall. It thickens, becoming a steady stream. The pot begins to make noises, small ticks and clinks as the metal expands, then a low rumble as the water approaches the boiling point. The smell of coffee begins to fill the space near the stove. It is a burnt, acrid smell, old coffee being reheated, but to him, it is the scent of comfort. It smells of civilization, of diners and kitchens and places where people are awake together. He reaches for his tin cup, which is sitting on the floor near the stove legs. He picks it up. It is light, empty. He holds it ready. The pot is rumbling now, a rigorous boil. He wraps his hand around the handle, using the tail of his coat to protect his glove from the hot metal. He lifts the pot. The liquid sloshes. He pours. The coffee is black, thick, steaming violently. It fills the cup, swirling with a dark, oily sheen. He fills it to the brim. He sets the pot back on the cooler part of the stove. He holds the cup in both hands, letting the heat transfer to his palms. It is too hot to drink. He blows on the surface, creating ripples in the black liquid. The steam rushes back into his face, warm and moist. He inhales it. It clears his sinuses, moistens his dry throat. He takes a small sip. It is bitter, strong, metallic. It scalds his tongue. He swallows, feeling the hot liquid travel down his esophagus, a tracer round of heat illuminating his interior. He takes another sip. Then another. He is drinking heat. He walks back to the desk, carrying the cup like a votive offering. He moves carefully, not wanting to spill a drop. To spill would be to waste heat. He sets the cup down on the desk on a small coaster of cork. He sits down. The chair accepts him again. The wood is still slightly warm from his previous occupancy. He settles in. His eyes go to the window. The frost has changed. The patterns are different now. The fern-like structures have been overgrown by thicker, blockier formations of ice. It looks less like a garden and more like a geological formation, a cliff face of white mineral. The ice is thickening, growing inward. He can see the layers, the history of the night recorded in frozen water. The bottom layer is clear, the middle layer is white, the top layer is crystalline. It is a sedimentary rock of cold. He wonders how thick it is. 1/8 of an inch, a quarter. It is a shield. It protects him from the vision of the void. If the glass were clear, he would have to look at the nothingness. The frost is a mercy. He picks up the pencil again. He taps it on the desk. Tap, tap, tap. The sound is dull, absorbed by the wood. He looks at the map on the wall. He traces the telegraph line with his eyes. He imagines the copper wire contracting in the cold. Physics dictates that the metal will shrink. The tension between the poles will increase. The wire will become tight, singing a higher note. If it gets too cold, the tension will exceed the tensile strength of the copper. Snap. The wire will recoil, whipping through the air, falling into the snow. The circuit will be broken. The sounder will go dead. The silence will become absolute. He looks at the sounder. It is still. The brass arm is motionless, but the circuit is closed. The current is flowing. The wire is holding. It is a testament to the engineers, to the linemen who strung it, to the quality of the metal. It is holding against the assault of the winter. He feels a surge of gratitude for the wire. It is his lifeline. It is the only thing that proves he is not the last man on earth. He reaches out and adjusts the spring tension on the key, a micro adjustment. He turns the knurled brass nut a fraction of a millimeter. He wants the key to feel right, to have the perfect amount of resistance if he needs to send. He tests it with his finger, pressing down but not making contact. The spring pushes back. It feels crisp, responsive. It is ready. The room is a composition of textures: the rough wool of his sleeve, the smooth, cold varnish of the desk, the pitted iron of the stove, the dusty glass of the lantern. The visual style is grainy, soft-edged. The light does not create sharp lines, it creates gradients of darkness. The corners are not black, they are deep, dusty gray. The floor is not brown, it is the color of dark chocolate, scuffed and worn. The air itself seems to have a texture, a graininess caused by the dust and the smoke and the cold. He thinks about the dawn. It is still hours away. The concept of morning feels abstract. The sun feels like a memory from a childhood story. Here in the deep trench of the night, there is only the lantern. The lantern is his sun. He checks the oil level in the reservoir. It is visible through the glass font. It is half full, enough for the rest of the night if he is careful. If the wick does not burn down, he watches the flame. It is yellow at the top, blue at the base. It flickers slightly as a draft wanders across the desk. The shadows on the wall jump. He leans forward, resting his forehead in his hands. He closes his eyes. He listens to the house. The station is a wooden ship sailing through a frozen sea. The timbers creak as the temperature fluctuates. The nails groan as the wood shrinks. The roof shudders under the wind. It is a symphony of stress, but it is a familiar symphony. He knows every sound. He knows which creak means a gust is coming, which groan means the temperature is dropping. He is tuned to the frequency of the building. He hears a sound that is not the building, a faint, rhythmic thump, thump, thump. He lifts his head, heart accelerating. Is it a horse? A person walking? He strains his ears, holding his breath. The sound continues, thump, thump, thump. He realizes what it is. It is a loose shingle on the roof flapping in the wind, a piece of wood lifting and slamming back down. He exhales, just the building, just the wind. There is no one coming. No one could survive out there. To be out there is to die. To be in here is to live. He takes another sip of coffee. It has cooled slightly but is still hot. The caffeine is a low-level buzz in his system, keeping the edges of his consciousness sharp. He is tired, a deep, bone-weary fatigue that sits in his marrow, but he is not sleepy. He is wired. He is in a state of hypervigilance. He is watching the nothingness. He looks at the batteries on the shelf again. The blue vitriol is calm. The zinc is suspended. The chemical reaction proceeds at its own atomic pace, indifferent to the storm. He wonders if the cold slows the reaction. Does the current drop? He looks at the galvanometer, a small instrument on the wall with a needle. The needle is steady. The current is constant. The chemistry holds. The science works. He pulls his pocket watch out of his vest pocket. The metal case is warm from his body heat. He presses the catch. The lid pops open. The white face of the watch glows in the lantern light. The black numerals are stark. The hands point to 3:15. The second hand sweeps around the small subdial. Tick, tick, tick. It is a relentless forward motion. Time is being eaten second by second. The night is being consumed, but it is a large meal. There is still so much of it left. He snaps the watch closed. Click. He puts it back in his pocket. He feels the weight of it against his ribs. It is a mechanical heart beating in sync with his own. He rests his hands on the desk again. He looks at his fingernails. They are pale, the cuticles dry and cracked. He needs to rub some grease on them, but not now. Now he must sit. He must wait. The wind rises again, a sudden, violent gust that hits the station like a physical blow. The entire structure leans, just a fraction of an inch, groaning in protest. The lantern swings wildly, the shadows spinning around the room like a carousel of ghosts. The operator grabs the edge of the desk, bracing himself. He feels the power of the air. It is immense. It is indifferent. It wants to flatten the station, to scatter the logs, to bury the man. But the station holds. The gust passes, leaving behind a vacuum of silence that is quickly filled by the steady roar of the gale. The operator relaxes his grip. He takes a deep breath. The air is cold in his lungs. He is still here. The line is still here. He looks at the key. It is waiting. He is waiting. The loop of time continues. The cold presses in. The fire burns. The wire hums. He decides to check the logbook again, flipping back through the pages to the previous winter. He finds an entry from January of last year. Heavy snow, lying down for 3 hours, repaired by crew from Junction. It is a reminder that the line can fail. It has failed before. It will fail again. But not tonight. Tonight, he is willing it to hold. He is holding it together with his mind, with his presence. He closes the logbook. The sound of the cover hitting the pages is soft, a muffled thud. He stares at the canvas cover. It is gray, stained with ink and oil. It looks like the landscape outside. Everything is gray. Everything is cold. He wraps his hands around the coffee cup again, seeking the last of the warmth. The cup is lukewarm now. The heat is fading. The cold is winning. He will have to stoke the fire again soon, but not yet. He must stretch the resources. He must endure. He sits. He stares. The room breathes around him. The darkness pulses. The wind sings its one-note song. The telegraph operator is a fixture of the room, as permanent as the stove, as silent as the batteries. He is the keeper of the line. The wind has become a monolith, a singular, unified structure of moving air that encases the station in a casket of turbulence. It no longer feels like gusts or blasts. It is a constant, crushing pressure, a fluid weight that leans against the logs with the insistence of a rising tide. The sound is a continuous, roaring static, a white noise that fills the spectrum of hearing, drowning out the subtle ticking of the watch and the rhythmic expansion of the stove. The operator sits inside this acoustic shell, his world reduced to the few cubic feet of illuminated space carved out by the lantern. The light is amber, thick and seemingly viscous, clinging to the objects in the room like a layer of transparent honey. It does not so much reveal the details of the room as it softens them, blurring the sharp edges of the desk and the stove into heavy, rounded shapes of charcoal and brown pastel. He stares at the lantern flame. It has begun to smoke. A thin, black tendril of soot is rising from the tip of the orange teardrop, curling up into the glass chimney. It is a sign of imperfection, of a wick that needs trimming, of a combustion that is choking on its own excess. The soot deposits on the glass, a dark smudge that slowly spreads, dimming the light, narrowing the circle of visibility. It is a small entropy, a tiny decay in the system of the room. The operator watches it with a detached fascination. He knows he must fix it. To leave it is to risk the glass cracking from the uneven heat, or the light failing altogether, plunging him into the absolute, suffocating dark. He prepares for the task. It is a delicate operation requiring steady hands in a shivering room. He pulls his gloves off one by one. The removal is slow. He grips the tip of each finger of the glove, tugging gently, easing the wool off the skin. His hands, when revealed, are pale, the color of old parchment. The skin is dry, tight across the knuckles. The nails are blue at the beds. The air attacks his bare skin immediately, a predatory cold that bites and stings. He flexes his fingers, fighting the stiffness, forcing the blood to flow into the capillaries. Open, close, open, close. He rubs them together, the dry friction creating a ghost of warmth. He stands up, the chair scrapes. He reaches for the lantern. He does not take it down from the hook, that would disturb the shadows too much. He stands on his toes, reaching up. He finds the small brass wheel at the base of the burner. The metal is hot, a shocking contrast to the air. He turns the wheel, the flame dips. It shrinks, retreating into the burner, turning from a tall, proud orange tongue to a low blue bead. The room plunges into semi-darkness. The corners rush in. The walls seem to jump forward. The only light now is the faint red glow from the stove grate and the tiny blue seed of fire in the lamp. The operator holds his breath. He reaches for the small lever that lifts the glass chimney. Click. The chimney tilts back. The smell of hot kerosene and raw smoke fills the air, a pungent chemical scent. He takes a small pair of scissors from his vest pocket. They are cold steel. He brings them to the wick. He must be precise. He snips the charred crest of the wick. Snip. A tiny piece of black carbon falls onto the burner. He snips again, rounding the corner. Snip. The sound is loud in the quiet room. It is a surgical procedure on the heart of the light. He lowers the chimney. Click. The glass settles back into place. He turns the wheel again. The flame rises. It grows brighter and cleaner than before. The orange returns, banishing the blue. The light floods back into the room, pushing the shadows back to the perimeter. The smoke is gone. The flame burns steady and true. He has restored order. He has maintained the light. It is a small victory, but in this room it is significant. He puts his gloves back on immediately. The wool is a relief, a rough embrace that shields his skin from the biting air. He works his fingers into the stalls, settling the fabric. He feels the warmth returning to his hands, a slow throb of circulation. He stands there for a moment, looking up at the lantern, admiring his work. The light is golden again, casting a warm, reassuring glow on the dusty floorboards. The dust motes dance in the thermal updraft, a microscopic galaxy swirling around the artificial sun. He walks back to the stove. The red glow in the grate is dimming. The coal he added earlier has burned down to a bed of ash-covered embers. The heat output has dropped. He can feel the difference. The zone of warmth has shrunk to a 3-foot radius around the iron cylinder. Beyond that, the cold dominates. He picks up the poker. He opens the door. The interior is a landscape of gray and dull red. He rakes the ashes. They fall through the grate into the pan below with a soft shush-shush sound. The movement exposes the live coals underneath, which glow brighter as the oxygen hits them. The fire wakes up. He reaches for the coal scuttle. It is lighter now. He has used a third of the supply. He selects 2 large lumps, heavy and dense. He places them carefully into the firebox, positioning them so they bridge the hot spots. He does not throw them, he places them. He treats the coal with reverence. It is stored sunlight, ancient energy dug from the earth to keep him alive tonight. He watches the smoke curl around the new lumps. He waits until a small blue flame licks up the side of the coal, confirming ignition. Then he closes the door. The latch falls. The cycle continues. He walks to the window. He cannot help himself. It is a magnet. The frost is now so thick it looks like white plaster smeared over the glass. There is no transparency left. The outside world is completely occluded. He places his hand against the frost. It is not just cold, it burns. It is a cold so intense it registers as heat to the confused nerves. He can feel the texture of the ice crystals through his glove. They are hard, sharp ridges. The window is a wall of ice. He wonders about the track. Is it still there? Or has the snow filled the cut so completely that the rails are lost, buried under 10 feet of drift? If a train came now, it would be like a ship plowing through a white ocean. But no train will come. The schedule is dead. The telegraph is the only thing that moves, the invisible current. He returns to the desk. He sits. The leather of the chair is cold again. It has forgotten him in the few minutes he was standing. He has to warm it up all over again. He shivers, a violent tremor that runs from his shoulders to his hips. He wraps his arms around himself, hugging the wool coat. He tucks his chin down. He enters the turtle shell of his clothing. He looks at the key. The brass is dull. He realizes he hasn't cleaned it in days. He picks up a rag from the desk, a piece of chamois leather that is stiff with age. He begins to polish the key. He rubs the brass knob, he rubs the lever, he rubs the binding posts. He does it slowly, methodically. Rub, rub, rub. The friction generates a tiny amount of heat. The brass begins to shine, a low, muted gleam in the lantern light. He removes a smudge of oil, a fingerprint, a speck of dust. He is tending to the altar of communication. As he polishes, he thinks of the signal. He thinks of the dots and dashes traveling through the wire. Where do they go when they are not received? If he sends a message and no one answers, does the message exist? It travels down the line, fading with distance, struggling against the resistance of the iron wire until it becomes too weak to trigger the sounder at the next station. It dies in the cold. It dissipates into the electromagnetic background of the earth. A ghost signal. He stops polishing. The key is clean, it looks ready. He rests his hand near it, he listens. The sounder is silent, the arm is up. The magnet is holding, the circuit is closed. It is a constant, silent affirmation. I am here. The wire is here. We are connected. He looks at the inkwell again. He unscrews the cap. He dips the pen. He needs to write something. The urge to record is strong. He pulls the logbook towards him. He finds the next line. 0400. He writes the numbers carefully. The ink is very thick now. It drags on the paper, leaving a heavy, raised line. Lantern trimmed, fire stoked, wind steady NNE, temp est. He underlines the temperature. It is a guess. He has no thermometer outside, but he knows the cold. He knows what -20 feels like. It feels like the air has teeth. He puts the pen down. He watches the ink dry. It takes a long time. The air is dry, but the cold slows the evaporation. The ink remains wet and glossy for minutes, a small black mirror reflecting the lantern flame. Finally, it turns matte. It is permanent. He has added another line to the history of the storm. He leans back. He is tired. His eyes are heavy. The lids feel like they are made of lead. He wants to close them. He wants to drift, but he cannot. He must watch the sounder. He must watch the fire. He picks up the paperweight again. The cold glass sphere. He rolls it between his palms. It is a cooling device. It keeps his hands from getting too warm, keeps him from getting too comfortable. The shock of the cold glass keeps him alert. He looks at the shadows on the floor. They are long and distorted. The legs of the desk cast shadows that look like the legs of a giant insect. The stove casts a shadow that looks like a crouching beast. The room is populated by these dark shapes. They move when the lantern swings. They seem to breathe. The operator is not afraid of them. He knows them. They are the inhabitants of the night shift. He thinks about the silence. It is not empty, it is full of pressure. It is the silence of a held breath. The wind outside is noise, yes, but inside the silence is a quality of the air. It is a heavy, blanketed silence. It muffles his thoughts. It makes his internal monologue slow and deliberate. He thinks in simple sentences. The fire is warm. The ice is cold. The wire is open. He reaches for the coffee cup. It is cold, stone cold. The liquid is black and still. He does not drink it. He leaves it there as a monument to the heat that was. He will make more later, when the dawn comes, if the dawn comes. He looks at the wall logs. He counts the rings in the end of a log near the corner. 1, 2, 3, 50, 60, 100. The tree was 100 years old when it was cut. It stood in the forest for a century. It felt the sun and the rain and the snow of 100 years. Now it is a wall. It is keeping the wind out. He respects the wood. It is doing its job. He feels a draft, a new one. It is coming from under the desk, a cold current of air curling around his ankles. He shifts his feet. He looks down. There is a knot hole in the floorboard. The plug of wood has shrunk and fallen out, leaving a hole the size of a coin. The cold is pouring up through it like a geyser. He can feel it. He reaches down. He finds a piece of paper, a scrap of an old form. He crumples it into a ball. He jams it into the hole. He pushes it tight. The draft stops. Another breach sealed. The battle is endless. The cold is a fluid that seeks every opening. He sits up. He rubs his lower back. The muscles are stiff. He twists his torso left, right. His spine cracks. Pop, pop. The sound is loud, organic. It reminds him that he is made of bone and gristle, not iron and wood. He is the softest thing in the room. He is the most vulnerable. He looks at the batteries on the shelf. The blue liquid glows. The zinc crow's feet hang suspended. They are silent watchers. They do not sleep. They do not get cold, they just work. He envies them, to be a machine, to be a chemical process, to have no need for sleep or warmth, to simply exist and function. He hears the wind shift again. It is dropping, the roar is lessening, it is becoming a moan again. A low, throbbing moan. Is the storm breaking, or is it just taking a breath? He listens. The impact of the snow on the wall has stopped. The scouring sound is gone. Now it is just the wind. He waits. Maybe the silence will return. Maybe the world will come back. But then a new sound. A low vibration. A hum, not the wind, the sounder. The sounder is humming. The armature is vibrating against the stop. Someone is on the line. The current is fluctuating. He sits up straight. Adrenaline spikes in his chest. He stares at the brass lever. It is twitching, not a full click but a ghost of a movement. The line is trying to speak. He reaches for the pencil. He holds it ready over the pad. He waits. The humming stops. The arm sits still. Silence. Was it a signal or just induction from the storm? Static electricity building up in the wire and discharging. He waits. Come on, he thinks. Send something. Nothing. The sounder is dead still. The wire is quiet. He lets out a breath. False alarm, the ghosts in the machine. He puts the pencil down. He rubs his face. His heart is beating fast. Thump, 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 thump. It slows down. The disappointment is a physical weight in his stomach. He wanted it to be real. He wanted a voice, even a mechanical one. He looks at the window. The frost is still there, the wall of white. He is still alone. He returns to the state of waiting. He is the operator. He keeps the line open, even for the ghosts. He leans forward, resting his elbows on the desk, his chin in his hands. He stares at the sounder. He wills it to move. Click, he thinks. Click. But the brass remains stationary. The physics of the circuit are indifferent to his will. It will click when the circuit is broken and closed at the other end, not before. He closes his eyes. He visualizes the other operator, a man like him sitting in a room like this miles away. Is he asleep? Is he looking at his sounder? Is he thinking of him? It is a tenuous connection, a thread of copper and a shared solitude. The lantern flickers. The oil is going down. He will have to refill it eventually, but not yet. There is still time. There is always time. The night is a vast, expansive country, and he is traveling across it at the speed of a ticking watch. He opens his eyes. The room is the same. The cold is the same. The duty is the same. He breathes in the cold air, tasting the dust and the smoke. He settles in. He waits. The silence that follows the false alarm of the sounder is a physical weight, a heavy, suffocating blanket that settles over the room, pressing the air out of the corners and compressing the operator into his chair. The brass arm of the instrument is motionless, a dead lever of metal that mocks the anticipation of the last few minutes. The phantom vibration is gone, replaced by the absolute, static stillness of the open circuit. The operator stares at the mechanism, his eyes tracing the familiar geometry of the coils, the anvil, the spring. It is a machine of pure potential, a tongue that can speak across continents, yet now it is as mute as a stone. The disappointment does not come as a sharp pang. It is too cold for that. Instead, it arrives as a slow, dull ache, a settling of the stomach, a deepening of the fatigue that lines his bones like lead. He uncurls his fingers from the pencil, letting it roll away across the desk. It makes a faint, dry sound, scrit-scrit, as it traverses the varnished wood, coming to rest against the base of the inkwell. The sound is tiny, insignificant, yet in the vacuum of the room it seems to echo, a scratching reminder of the solitude. He looks at his hand. It is shaped like a claw, the fingers stiff from holding the pencil, the skin pale and bloodless. He flexes the hand slowly, watching the tendons slide under the parchment skin. The movement is sluggish. The cold has seeped into the joints, thickening the synovial fluid, turning the biology of the hand into a rusty hinge. The room has settled into a deep chemical slumber. The air is thick with the byproducts of combustion, the oily scent of the kerosene, the sulfurous tang of the coal, the stale, recycled breath of the man. These smells are not sharp. They are heavy, layered one on top of the other, forming an olfactory sediment that coats the back of the throat. The operator breathes in, a shallow, measured intake of air. He tastes the dust. It is a dry, ancient dust, composed of pulverized wood, coal ash, and the fibers of old wool. It is the taste of the station itself. He turns his head slowly towards the batteries on the side shelf. They are the only things in the room that possess color, a deep, resonant blue that seems to belong to another world. He feels a compulsion to check them again, to ensure that the chemical heart of the telegraph is still beating. He pushes the chair back. The leather squeals, a high-pitched protest that cuts through the low rumble of the wind. He stands, his knees popping with a sound like dry branches breaking under snow. He walks across the floor, his boots falling heavily on the planks. Thump, thump, thump. The sound is deadened, absorbed by the wood, by the darkness. He stands before the shelf. The lantern light barely reaches here, casting long, distorted shadows across the glass jars. He leans in close, his face inches from the cold glass. He can smell the acid, a sharp, metallic bite that tingles in the nostrils. The batteries are gravity cells, simple and brutal in their chemistry. At the bottom of each jar, the copper electrode sits in a bath of blue vitriol, copper sulfate. It is a dense, beautiful liquid, the color of a twilight sky before the stars come out. Above it, floating on the difference in specific gravity, is the clear solution of zinc sulfate, in which the zinc crow's foot hangs suspended. He examines the line of separation between the blue and the clear. It is a hazy frontier, a blending of densities. It must be maintained. If the blue rises and touches the zinc, the battery will short, the zinc will become coated in copper, and the current will die. He watches the line. It is stable. It is a miracle of stillness. Despite the storm raging outside, despite the vibration of the walls, the liquid inside the jars remains stratified, respecting the laws of physics. The operator feels a strange affection for the blue liquid. It is the fuel of communication. It is the liquid voice of the wire. He looks at the zincs. They are gray, pitted, eaten away by the slow, relentless appetite of the reaction. They are sacrificing themselves to create the current. Atom by atom, the metal is dissolving, giving up its electrons to the circuit. It is a slow, silent death, a martyrdom of metallurgy. He traces the wire that connects the cells. It is a copper thread covered in brittle insulation. It snakes from jar to jar, binding them into a single, powerful unit. He touches a binding post. It is cold and greasy. He gives it a tiny twist. It is tight. The connection is solid. He turns away from the shelf, leaving the batteries to their silent work. He walks back towards the center of the room where the stove stands like a black iron monolith. The heat has retreated further. The air around the stove is no longer hot. It is merely warm. The fire is banking down, entering a dormant phase. He needs to wake it up, but gently. He picks up the poker. The metal is cool in his hand. He opens the door of the firebox. The interior is a landscape of sullen red. The coals are coated in a thick layer of gray ash, which insulates them, holding the heat in but preventing it from radiating outward. It is a suffocated fire. He inserts the poker, sliding the hooked end under the mass of clinkers. He lifts gently. The ash breaks apart, falling through the grate in a soft gray rain. S-H-H-H-H-S-H-H-H-H. The sound is like sand pouring through an hourglass. As the ash falls away, the red heart of the fire is revealed. It glows brighter, breathing in the fresh oxygen. The operator works the poker methodically, clearing the grate, creating airways through the fuel. He does not add more coal yet. There is still life in these embers. He must extract every calorie before he spends more of the precious supply. He closes the door, the latch clicks. He adjusts the draft control, opening the vent slightly to increase the airflow. He listens. He can hear the fire responding, a low, faint roar as the combustion accelerates. It is a conversation between the man and the stove, conducted in the language of air and iron. He hangs the poker back on its hook. It swings, tapping against the side of the stove. Tink, tink. The sound dies quickly, swallowed by the room. He walks to the window again, the magnetic pull of the barrier. The frost has changed again. The crystals have merged, forming a solid, opaque sheet that looks like white marble. The patterns are gone, replaced by a brutal, uniform thickness. He places his hand against the glass, or rather against the ice that coats the glass. The cold is shocking. It travels up his arm, a fast-moving current of numbness. He wonders how thick the ice is on the outside. Is the whole building encased in a shell of ice? Is he inside a glacier? He scratches at the frost with a fingernail. It is as hard as stone. He makes no impression. He cannot see out. The world outside is gone. There is no landscape, no horizon, no sky. There is only the white blindness of the storm. He feels a moment of vertigo, a sense of being unmoored. If he cannot see the earth, how does he know he is still on it? Maybe the station has been lifted up by the wind, carried away into the void, a wooden capsule floating in a universe of ice. He shakes his head, dispelling the thought. It is the fatigue. It is the isolation. He is grounded. The floor is solid. The tracks are there, buried but real. He returns to the desk. He does not sit immediately. He stands behind the chair, gripping the backrest. The wood is smooth, polished by the hands of all the operators who came before him. He feels their presence. They are a ghostly fraternity of watchers, men who sat in this chair, stared at this window, listened to this wind. Did they feel the same crushing weight of the silence? Did they hallucinate signals on the wire? He imagines them, a line of shadowy figures stretching back into the past, all of them wearing heavy coats, all of them waiting. He looks at the map on the wall. The paper is yellow, curling at the corners. The ink is faded. He finds his station. A tiny black dot, a speck of fly dirt on the vast emptiness of the paper. He looks at the distance to the next station, 20 miles. In the summer on a handcar, it is an hour. In the winter on a train, it is 40 minutes. Tonight in this storm, it is an infinity. It might as well be on the moon. The line on the map connecting the dots is thin, fragile. It represents the wire. He traces it with his eyes, over the pass, through the tunnel, across the trestle. The trestle. He worries about the trestle. It is a wooden structure spanning a deep gorge. The wind there must be ferocious. If the ice builds up on the timbers, the weight could be immense. If the trestle goes, the line goes. The physical line and the telegraph line. Severed. He sits down. The chair groans. He settles his weight, feeling the familiar pressure on his spine. He pulls the coat tight around him. He is a bundle of wool and worry. He looks at the sounder, still silent. The arm is up. The current flows. The trestle is holding. The wire is holding. He picks up the logbook. He turns the page. The previous page is full of emptiness. The new page is crisp, clean, waiting. He feels a need to contaminate the perfection of the paper with the reality of the night. He dips the pen. The ink is a black globule. He writes the date at the top of the page. The numbers look stark, isolated. He writes 0500 in the time column, 5 in the morning. The concept seems absurd. It is still deep, dark night, but the clock says it is morning. The machine says the sun is approaching. He writes, status unchanged, wind NNE gale force, temp est, no signals. The words are small, tight. He is conserving ink. He is conserving movement. He puts the pen down. He watches the ink dry. It takes forever. The moisture hangs in the liquid, refusing to evaporate into the saturated cold air. He blows on it gently. A small cloud of steam from his breath hits the paper, fogging the ink. He watches the fog dissipate. He leans back, interlacing his fingers across his stomach. He closes his eyes. The darkness behind his eyelids is a relief. It is a warm darkness, unlike the cold darkness of the room. He lets his mind drift. He thinks of fire, not the sullen coal fire in the stove, but a roaring bonfire, a summer fire. He imagines the smell of burning pine needles, the crackle of dry wood, the sparks rising up into a starry sky. He imagines the heat on his face, intense and blistering. He imagines the sound of crickets, the smell of grass. He builds this memory brick by brick, reconstructing a world of warmth. But the cold intrudes. It seeps through the floorboards, curling around his ankles like icy water. It climbs his legs, penetrating the heavy trousers. It finds the gaps in the coat. It whispers to him that the summer is a lie. The summer is a dream. The only reality is the ice. He opens his eyes. The bonfire vanishes. The room returns. The gray walls, the black stove, the white window. He reaches for the pocket watch. He holds it in his palm, feeling its weight. It is a dense metallic object, a nugget of order. He presses the catch. Click. The lid opens. 5:12. 12 minutes have passed since he wrote in the log. 12 minutes. It felt like an hour. Time is dilating. The cold is slowing down the passage of moments, freezing them, stretching them out like taffy. He watches the second hand. Tick, tick, tick. It jerks forward, fighting the friction of the gears. Even the watch is tired. Even the spring is feeling the cold. He winds the watch. Ratch, ratch, ratch. The sound is loud, mechanical. He winds it until he feels resistance. He is storing energy in the spring, banking time just as he banks the fire. He closes the lid. Snap. He puts the watch back in his pocket, close to his body. He keeps time warm. He looks at the telegraph key. He feels a sudden urge to break the silence, to tap out a message. CQ, 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 calling all stations. Is anyone there? Is the world still there? It would be a violation of regulations. The line is for business. But surely in this extremity a human signal is permitted. He reaches out. His finger hovers over the key. He trembles. It is not the cold. It is the desire for connection. He wants to hear the sounder chatter. He wants to know that he is not the last consciousness in the universe. He pulls his hand back. No, he must not. If he opens the key, he breaks the circuit. For that split second, the line is dead. What if in that exact moment someone tries to send a distress signal? What if he blocks the one message that matters? He cannot take the risk. He is the guardian. He must listen, not speak. The discipline is iron. The duty is absolute. He wraps his arms around himself again. He rocks slightly in the chair, back and forth. A microscopic motion. It is a self-soothing gesture. The wind howls outside, a rising crescendo that shakes the entire station. The logs groan. Dust sifts down from the ceiling, landing on the desk, on the paper, on his hands. It is a fine gray powder. The station is slowly disintegrating, shaking itself apart under the stress. He looks at the dust on his hand. He blows it away. It scatters into the air, joining the millions of other particles that float in the lantern light. The room is a snow globe of dust. He thinks about the coal scuttle again. He eyes the remaining lumps. It is getting low. He has enough for maybe 4 hours. Dawn should be here in 2 or 3. It will be close. He will have to be very careful. He will have to let the room get colder. He will have to sacrifice comfort for survival. He pulls the coat collar higher, burying his ears in the wool. He prepares himself for the temperature to drop. The shadows in the corner of the room seem to lengthen. They are reaching for him. The darkness is a fluid that is slowly filling the room, rising from the floor like floodwater. The lantern is an island. He is stranded on the island. He watches the flame. It is his lighthouse. As long as it burns, he is safe. He hears a sound, a sharp crack. It comes from the window. He turns his head. A new fracture has appeared in the frost, a diagonal line running across the pane. The glass has cracked. The thermal stress was too much. The inside is warm, the outside is absolute zero. The glass gave up. He stares at the crack. It is a hairline fracture. No air is coming through yet. The frost is holding it together. The ice is the glue, but the integrity of the barrier is compromised. The window is broken. He stands up, alarmed. He rushes to the window. He leans in, examining the damage. The crack runs from the bottom left corner to the center. It is deep. He holds his hand up to it. He can feel a faint, razor-sharp stream of cold air bleeding through. The seal is broken. The enemy is inside. He needs to patch it. He looks around frantically. What does he have? Rags, paper. He needs something solid. He sees the logbook. No, he cannot use the record. He sees a stack of old forms. He grabs a handful. He rushes to the water bucket near the stove. The water has a skiff of ice on top. He breaks it with his fist. He dunks the papers into the water. They turn sodden heavy. He runs back to the window. He slaps the wet papers over the crack. He presses them against the glass and the frost. The water in the paper freezes instantly on contact with the supercooled glass. The paper turns into a hard, frozen cast. It bonds to the window. He adds another layer, and another. He is building a papier-mâché bandage of ice and wood pulp. He smooths it down with his gloved hands. The cold burns his fingers through the wet wool. He steps back. The patch is ugly, a gray lump on the white frost, but the draft has stopped. The paper has frozen solid, sealing the breach. He breathes heavily. His breath plumes in the air. That was close. That was a skirmish. He won, but the window is wounded. It is weak. He cannot trust it anymore. He will have to watch it. He walks back to the stove, holding his wet gloves towards the heat. Steam rises from the wool, smelling of wet sheep. He turns his hands, drying the fabric. The moisture sizzles faintly. He shakes his head. The night is trying to kill him. It is probing for weaknesses. First the draft under the door, then the knot hole, now the window. It is a siege. He dries his gloves until they are merely damp, not sodden. He cannot wait longer. He needs to sit. He needs to conserve energy. He returns to the chair. He sits. He looks at the patch on the window. It is a scar, a reminder of the violence of the cold. He looks at the sounder. Silence. The wire is indifferent to his struggle. The wire does not care about the window. The wire only cares about the current. He respects the wire. It is focused. He must be focused. He leans back. He closes his eyes for a second. The image of the cracked glass is burned into his retina, a jagged line of failure. He opens his eyes. He checks the room. The lantern, the stove, the desk, the shadows, everything is in its place. The station holds. He settles in again. The wind moans, the building creaks, the watch ticks. He is the operator. He is the repairman. He is the survivor. He waits. The night drags on, heavy and slow, like a glacier moving down a valley. He is a stone in its path. He will not move. He will not break. He keeps the line open. The makeshift bandage on the window pane has ceased to be a foreign object and has become an integral part of the station's anatomy. The layers of wet paper, slapped hastily against the fracture in the glass, have frozen into a solid composite mass, a gray scab on the face of the white frost. It is ugly, a chaotic lump of frozen pulp amidst the crystalline perfection of the ice, but it is effective. The razor-thin stream of supercooled air that had been slicing into the room has been stifled. The operator watches the patch from his chair, his eyes tracing the uneven edges where the paper meets the frost. He imagines the molecular bond forming there, the water in the paper fibers interlocking with the ice on the glass, welding the two materials together in a union of cold. It is a repair born of desperation, a testament to the fact that in this environment, water is not a liquid. It is a structural material, a glue, a cement that sets instantly upon exposure to the air. He shifts his hands inside his gloves. The wool is still damp, clammy against his skin. The heat from the stove had steamed them, but it had not dried them completely. Now, the moisture trapped in the fibers is beginning to cool, turning the gloves into cold, wet compresses that wrap around his fingers. It is an unpleasant sensation, a creeping chill that saps the dexterity from his hands. He pulls the gloves off again, peeling the damp wool away with a grimace. He lays them on the top of the stove, not on the hottest part, but on the side shelf, the warming plate. They land with a soft, wet slap. Almost immediately, a faint wisp of steam begins to rise from them, carrying the smell of wet animal hair and old lanolin into the stagnant air of the room. He watches the steam curl and twist, a ghostly signal rising from the iron altar. His bare hands are pale, the knuckles red and raw. He rubs them together, the dry skin rasping. He holds them out towards the firebox, palms open, fingers splayed. The heat is a physical caress, a relief so profound it borders on pain. He can feel the blood moving in his veins, a sluggish, thawing river. He turns his hands over, warming the backs, watching the fine hairs on his wrists stand up in the thermal current. He is a worshipper of the calorie, a devotee of the thermal unit. Every movement, every thought, every action is dictated by the need to preserve and acquire heat. The room feels older now. The night has dragged on for so long that the station seems to have aged years in the span of a few hours. The dust on the floor seems thicker. The shadows in the corners seem deeper, more permanent, as if they have stained the wood. The lantern light has taken on a heavy, amber quality, struggling to push through the air that feels thickened by the cold. The operator looks at the lantern. The oil level in the glass font has dropped perceptibly since he last checked. It is approaching the 1/3 mark. It is a finite clock, a liquid countdown. When the oil is gone, the light goes. He calculates the burn rate in his head. If he turns the wick down a fraction, he can extend the time. But if he turns it down, the shadows will advance. It is a negotiation between visibility and duration. He decides to leave it. He needs the light. He needs to see the corners. He needs to see the sounder. He cannot sit in the semi-darkness with the wind howling outside. The psychological cost would be too high. He accepts the expenditure of the oil as the price of his sanity. He turns his attention back to the stove. The fire is quiet. The roar of the draft has subsided to a gentle murmur. The coal he added earlier has been consumed, transformed into heat and ash. The bed of coals is a dull, pulsating red, covered in a blanket of gray flakes. It is time to feed the beast again, but gently, sparingly. He picks up the poker, he opens the door. The latch is hot, stinging his bare fingers. He uses the tail of his coat to protect his skin. The door swings open. The heat flushes his face, drying his eyes. He stirs the ash. It falls away, revealing the glowing core. It is a small core. The fire is shrinking. It is retreating into itself, conserving its energy. He reaches for the scuttle. He selects a single, large lump of coal. It is a dense black rock heavy with carbon. He places it in the center of the firebox, right on top of the red heart. He does not add a second. One lump. That is the ration. He watches the lump sit there, cold and black, an intruder in the red landscape. Slowly, the heat begins to work on it. The edges begin to glow. A thin wisp of yellow smoke curls up. Then a small blue flame flicks into existence, dancing along the side of the coal. Ignition. The cycle is renewed. He closes the door. Clank. The sound is final, decisive. He has made his investment for the hour. He hangs the poker up. He picks up his gloves from the warming shelf. They are hot now, steaming vigorously. He puts them on. The hot wool feels exquisite, a burning comfort that encloses his hands. He flexes his fingers, enjoying the temporary flexibility. He feels armed again. He feels ready to face the desk. He walks back to the chair. He sits. The leather creates a fresh shock of cold against his back, but he is used to it now. He settles in, finding the groove in the cushion that his body has carved out over the long hours. He looks at the sounder. It is a monument to silence. The brass arm is frozen in the up position, held by the magnetic tension of the closed circuit. It is a binary device, currently reading 1 in a continuous stream of ones that has lasted for hours. A 0, a break in the line, would be a scream in this quiet. He leans forward and rests his elbows on the desk. He stares at the wood grain. The varnish is scratched and worn, a map of microscopic canyons and rivers. He traces a long scratch with his eye. It looks like a river valley. He imagines himself walking along that river, a tiny figure in a landscape of oak. It is a way to escape the room, to shrink himself down and enter the microcosm of the desk. The wind outside has changed its voice again. The high-pitched shrieking has gone, replaced by a heavy, rhythmic buffering. It sounds like a heavy sack is being dragged repeatedly against the side of the building. Whump, whump, whump. It is the sound of the wind gusts hitting the broad side of the logs, a percussive assault. The station absorbs the blows. It shudders, vibrates, and settles, but it does not yield. The operator feels the vibrations in his forearms as they rest on the desk. The whole world is shaking, trembling under the force of the air. He looks at the window again. The patch is holding. The frost around it has thickened, growing over the edges of the paper, sealing it further. The window is no longer a window. It is a wall of composite materials: glass, ice, paper, frost. It admits no light, no view. It is merely a barrier. He wonders what time it is. He resists looking at the watch. If he looks too often, the time slows down. He must let the time accumulate. Let the minutes pile up like snowdrifts before he checks the measurement. Instead, he reaches for the manual of regulations again. The book is cold, the cloth cover stiff. He opens it to a random page, page 42, Maintenance of Gravity Batteries. He reads the text, letting the dry, technical words wash over him. The blue vitriol should be dropped into the bottom of the jar. Care should be taken not to disturb the separation of the fluids. The zinc should be cleaned of black deposit. It is a liturgy of maintenance. He reads it not for information, for he knows it by heart, but for the rhythm of the sentences. The words are orderly. They describe a world where cause and effect are linked, where following the rules produces a result. In this room, in this storm, cause and effect feel disjointed. The wind blows regardless of the regulations. The cold penetrates regardless of the stove. He looks up from the book and stares at the real batteries on the shelf. The blue liquid is still there, glowing in the shadows. He wonders about the chemistry. Is it slowing down? Arrhenius's equation states that chemical reactions slow down as the temperature drops. If the room gets cold enough, will the battery simply stop producing current? Will the electrons freeze in their orbits? He imagines the current in the wire becoming sluggish, a thick syrup of electricity struggling to push through the copper. It is a fanciful thought, scientifically suspect, but it feels true. Everything else is slowing down. Why not the lightning? He closes the book. The sound is a soft thud. He pushes it away. He picks up the paperweight, the cold glass sphere. He holds it up to the lantern light. The swirl of blue pigment inside catches the illumination. It looks like a frozen wave, a tsunami trapped in glass. He turns it. The wave crashes but never moves. It is a storm in a bottle, safe, contained, unlike the storm outside. He feels a heaviness in his legs. The blood is pooling there, gravity pulling it down. He needs to move again. The pacing, the prisoner's walk. He stands up. He walks to the door. He stops. He listens at the crack. He can hear the snow hissing against the wood. It sounds like sandblasting. The drift on the other side must be substantial. He wonders if he can even open the door. It opens inward so he could pull it open, but would a wall of snow collapse into the room? He imagines opening the door and seeing a solid white wall, a vertical snowbank blocking the exit. He would be sealed in, buried alive. He steps back from the door. He does not want to know. As long as the door is closed, the possibility remains that he could leave. If he opens it and finds the wall, the hope is gone. He turns his back on the door. He walks to the stove. He walks to the window. He walks to the desk, the triangle of his existence. He stops at the map on the wall. He leans in, studying the typography. The names of the towns are written in a serif font, tiny and precise. Silver Creek, Summit, Elkhorn, he whispers the names. Silver Creek, Summit, Elkhorn. His voice sounds strange, raspy, unused. It startles him. He clears his throat. A hum. The sound is loud, harsh. He hasn't spoken in hours. The silence has colonized his throat. He tries again. Station check, he whispers. All secure. The words fall dead in the air, absorbed by the logs. There is no echo. The room is too full of soft, sound-absorbing things, dust, wool, shadows. He looks at the telegraph key. It sits there, patient, metallic. He feels a sudden, irrational anger towards it. It is so passive. It demands his attention, his vigil, yet it gives nothing back. It sits there and demands that he wait. It is a tyrant of brass. He glares at it. Say something, he thinks. Click, do something. The key ignores him. It reflects the lantern light with a dull, indifferent gleam. The operator sighs, the anger dissipating as quickly as it came, replaced by the familiar fatigue. It is not the key's fault. The key is just a tool. The silence is the fault of the world. He sits down again. He checks the inkwell. He needs to perform a task. He needs to clean the pen nib. He picks up the pen. The nib is crusted with dried ink. He takes the chamois cloth. He rubs the nib. The dried ink flakes off, black dust falling onto the desk. He rubs until the steel shines. It is a small act of restoration. He dips the pen into the ink, then wipes it clean again. He repeats this. Dip, wipe. Dip, wipe. It is a fidget, a way to keep his hands moving, to keep the fine motor skills from atrophying in the cold. He looks at the logbook. The last entry was at 0500. He pulls the watch out. 05:45. The hour is approaching, the dawn hour, or what passes for dawn. He feels a stir of anticipation. 6:00 a.m. feels like a milestone. It is the end of the deep night. It is the beginning of the morning shift, even if the shift is just him continuing to sit there. It is a psychological barrier. If he can make it to 6, he can make it to noon. He puts the watch away. He rests his chin in his hands. He stares at the stove. The draft control is open. The fire is breathing. He can hear the faint hiss-pop of the coal gas igniting. It is a comforting sound. It means the reaction is self-sustaining. He does not need to intervene for a while. He closes his eyes. He lets the visual world fade away. He focuses entirely on the auditory landscape. The wind, a deep, rolling bass. The stove, a quiet, ticking percussion. The building, a groaning string section. The silence of the wire, a rest in the musical score. He orchestrates the sounds in his mind, turning the noise of the storm into a symphony of endurance. He is the conductor of the station. He drifts, not into sleep, but into a state of low-frequency consciousness. His thoughts become slow, fluid. He thinks of the snow. He thinks of the millions of snowflakes falling outside, each one unique, each one a tiny crystal of ice. They are piling up, interlocking, forming a blanket that covers the world. He imagines the station from the outside, a small hump in the snow, a chimney breathing smoke. Does it look like a bear sleeping? Does it look like a rock? A sharp vibration from the desk jolts him. He snaps his eyes open. He sits up. Was it the sounder? He stares at the brass arm. It is still. He looks at his elbow. He had slipped. His arm had jerked as he drifted too close to sleep. A hypnagogic jerk, his body waking itself up. He shakes his head, rubbing his face. Stay awake, he whispers. Stay awake. He reaches for the coffee cup. It is empty. The coffee is gone. He looks at the pot. It is sitting on the cool side of the stove. He should make more, but the effort seems immense. To stand up, to pour, to wait, he decides against it. He will wait for 6 o'clock. At 6 o'clock he will make fresh coffee, a reward, a celebration of survival. He looks at the floor near the door. The fan of snow that had blown in earlier has not melted. It has sublimated slightly, shrinking in size, but it is still there, a white scar on the dark wood. It is a thermometer. The floor is below freezing. If he were to lie down on the floor, he would die. The heat is stratified. He is living in the upper layer of the atmosphere of the room. He keeps his feet tucked under the chair, on the rungs off the floor. He wraps his coat tighter. He feels the texture of the wool against his neck. It is scratchy, comforting. It smells of him. It smells of the job. He wonders if he will ever be warm again. Really warm, sweat dripping warm. It seems impossible. The cold feels permanent, as if the sun has gone out and the earth is drifting away from it. He looks at the shadows on the ceiling. They are still swinging. The lantern is still moving in the draft. The pendulum of the night, back and forth, back and forth. He matches his breathing to the swing. In, out, in, out. He thinks about the wire again. He visualizes the copper molecules. He visualizes the electrons. He tries to sense the current. Is it strong? Is it weak? Is it fading? He wills the current to flow. Flow, he thinks, keep moving, don't freeze. He is pushing the electrons with his mind. It is a delusion, but it helps. It gives him agency. He checks the time again. 05:52, 8 minutes to 6, the longest 8 minutes of the night. He watches the second hand. It moves with agonizing slowness. It sweeps around the dial, chopping the time into tiny, edible pieces. He eats the time. He digests the seconds. He is consuming his life, one tick at a time in this wooden box. He looks at the window patch one more time. It is gray, solid, ugly. It is the most beautiful thing in the room. It is a victory. He nods at it, acknowledging the alliance between the paper and the ice. He sits, he waits. The wind buffets the wall. Whump, the station shakes. The operator holds the desk. He rides out the gust. He is the captain of the ship. He is holding the course. The course is 0. The speed is 0. The destination is dawn. The minute hand of the pocket watch traverses the final quadrant of the dial. A slow, mechanical march that bridges the gap between the concept of night and the theoretical arrival of morning. The operator watches the hand click into place, aligning perfectly with the vertical axis of the 12:06:00 a.m. The number is significant in the world of schedules and timetables, a delineator between the graveyard shift and the day shift. But here, inside the wooden shell of the station, it is merely a number. The room remains a cavern of charcoal shadows and amber light. There is no sun to herald the change. There is no sudden illumination of the window. The storm has obliterated the celestial mechanics of dawn, leaving only the human construct of time to mark the passage of the Earth's rotation. He snaps the watch closed. The sound is a sharp, metallic punctuation mark. He slides the instrument back into his vest pocket, feeling the familiar weight settle against his ribs. He has survived the deep night. He has navigated the hours of maximum darkness. Now begins the gray hours, the long, indeterminate stretch where the blackness outside might, if he is lucky, soften to the color of wet slate. He picks up the pen to formalize the moment. He opens the logbook. The paper is cool under his hand. He writes 0600 in the column. His handwriting is stiff, the loops of the sixes angular and jagged. Dawn, he writes, then pauses. Is it dawn? He looks at the window. The patch of frozen paper is a dark gray blotch. The frost around it is a lighter gray. There is no light, only a lessening of the absolute black. He continues writing. No visibility, sky obscured. Wind NNE steady, line clear. He puts the pen down, the ritual is complete. The night is officially over according to the ink. Now the reward, the coffee. He pushes the chair back, the wood groaning in sympathy with his own stiff joints. He stands up, unfolding his body segment by segment. His knees ache with a dull, throbbing pain born of cold and immobility. He stretches, reaching his arms up towards the rafters, his fingertips brushing the warmer air near the ceiling. He feels the pull in his shoulders, the crack of his vertebrae. He lowers his arms and exhales, a cloud of vapor escaping his lips. He walks to the stove. The fire is low, a sullen bed of red embers that offers heat only to those who stand directly before it. He ignores the fire for a moment and focuses on the water. He picks up the enamel pot. It is light, containing only the dregs of the night's brew. He carries it to the door, intending to empty it. He unlatches the door. The wind pushes against it, a heavy, insistent hand. He shoves back, opening the door a mere 3 inches. The noise of the storm explodes into the room, a deafening roar of rushing air. Snow sprays in, stinging his face like sand. He tosses the old coffee out into the white maelstrom. The liquid disappears instantly, snatched away by the wind before it even hits the ground. He slams the door shut, leaning his weight against it to engage the latch. Clank. The roar is cut off, reduced once again to a muffled vibration. He walks to the water bucket in the corner. He breaks the surface ice with the metal dipper. The sound of crunching ice is loud in the quiet room. He scoops up water, clear and freezing, and pours it into the pot. He does this 3 times. The water hits the metal bottom of the pot with a hollow, ringing sound. Now the coffee. He opens a tin canister on the shelf. The smell of the grounds is rich and earthy, a dark, roasted scent that cuts through the smell of kerosene and coal. He measures the grounds with a spoon. 1, 2, 3. He is generous. It is the morning cup. It needs to be strong. It needs to be fuel. He places the pot on the stove, moving it directly over the firebox. He listens. He waits for the heating process to begin. While he waits, he tends the fire. He needs the heat to rise, to boil the water, to push back the morning chill. He opens the firebox door. The draft sucks the flame inward. He adds coal, 3 lumps this time, an extravagance, but necessary. The temperature outside always drops just before dawn, a final, brutal plunge before the slow climb of the day. He can feel it happening now. The air in the room feels thinner, sharper. The cold is aggressive. He closes the stove door and adjusts the damper. He wants a roaring fire for 10 minutes, a sprint of heat. He stands before the stove, watching the iron skin. He hears the coal catch, the crackle pop of the ignition. The stove begins to tick as the metal expands. It is a good sound. It is the sound of energy being released. He waits for the boil. It is a slow process. He watches the steam begin to rise from the spout of the coffee pot. At first, it is a wisp, a tentative thread of white. Then it grows, becoming a steady column that hits the draft from the stove and spirals up towards the ceiling. The smell of the coffee changes, shifting from the raw scent of grounds to the cooked, acidic aroma of the brew. It fills the space around the stove, a bubble of olfactory comfort. The pot begins to rumble. The lid rattles, clinking. The water is rolling. He lets it boil for a minute. He wants the extraction to be complete. He wants every molecule of caffeine and flavor stripped from the grounds. He wraps his hand in his coat tail and lifts the pot. He pours the steaming black liquid into his tin cup. He fills it to the brim. The steam bathes his face. He inhales deeply, letting the heat penetrate his sinuses. It is a moment of pure sensory pleasure in a world of deprivation. He carries the cup back to the desk. He walks carefully, treating the liquid as if it were molten gold. He sits down. The chair is cold, but the cup in his hands is hot. He holds it with both hands, letting the heat soak into his palms, his fingers, his wrists. He takes the first sip. It is scalding. It burns his lip, his tongue. He winces, but he does not stop. He swallows. The heat travels down his throat, a distinct burning line that terminates in his stomach. It radiates outward from there, a small internal sun. He sighs. He looks at the window. The gray is intensifying. It is not light exactly. It is a change in the texture of the darkness. The charcoal of the night is turning into the slate of the morning. The frost on the window is no longer glistening with the lantern light. It is dull, flat, absorbing the faint ambient illumination from outside. The paper patch looks darker, a bruise on the glass. He can see the texture of the paper now, the fibers frozen into a chaotic mat. He leans forward and peers at the frost. He is looking for a sign of the weather clearing. If the gray is uniform, the storm is still thick. If there are variations, lighter patches, it might be breaking. He sees only uniformity, a wall of gray. The snow is still falling, or rather, being driven horizontally. The world is still wrapped in cotton wool and ice. He turns his attention to the lantern. In the shifting light, the flame looks different. It seems less brilliant, more yellow, more fragile. The contrast between the light and the shadow is softening. The sharp edges of the shadows are blurring. The room is entering a phase of low contrast, a visual flatness that is straining to the eyes. He considers turning the lantern off to save oil. He reaches for the key, then stops. No, it is too dark. The gray light from the window is cold, depressing. The lantern light is warm. He needs the warmth of the color as much as the illumination. He leaves it burning. He picks up the coaster from the desk. It is a circle of cork stained with the rings of 1,000 coffee cups. He turns it over in his fingers. It is a trivial object, but it has a texture. Cork. Rough, porous, warm to the touch. He focuses on the texture. He tries to feel every pit, every grain. It is an exercise in grounding. I am here. This is real. The cork is real. He puts the coaster down and places the cup on it. He looks at the telegraph key. It is the centerpiece of the desk, the reason he is here. It gleams dully in the mixed light. The brass looks colder now, less like gold and more like industrial metal. He reaches out and touches the lever. It is freezing. The metal sucks the heat from his finger. He taps it once without breaking the circuit. Just a touch. A greeting. Good morning, machine. The machine does not answer. The sounder remains silent. The wire remains silent. He wonders if the operator at the junction is drinking coffee too. Is he looking at his window? Is he thinking about the man up the line buried in the snow? Or is he busy dealing with the mainline traffic, the trains that are still running in the south, the world of movement and noise? The operator feels a pang of jealousy. To be busy, to have tasks, to have noise, it seems like a luxury. He picks up the manual again. He needs words. He needs language. He opens it to the section on emergency procedures. He reads, "In the event of line failure, the operator must verify local connections. Check the relay adjustment. If the fault is external, the operator must wait. Wait." The word appears again and again. The manual is a book of waiting. It codifies patience. It turns doing nothing into a procedure. He closes the book. He looks at the map. The map is a lie. It shows the world as a flat, organized plane. It shows the mountains as wrinkles on paper. It does not show the height, the cold, the wind. It reduces the struggle of existence to geometry. He hates the map right now. He wants to tear it off the wall, but he doesn't. He needs it. It defines his position. Without the map, he is just a man in a box in the snow. With the map, he is station number 9. He is a coordinate. He hears a sound, a sharp crack. It comes from the roof. The timbers are contracting. The cold of the dawn is shrinking the wood. The station is tightening its belt. He looks up at the ceiling. The rafters are dark beams crossing the gray space. He wonders if the roof holds the snow or if the wind scours it clean. He hopes it is clean. The weight of the snow could be dangerous. He imagines the roof collapsing, the heavy beams crashing down, the snow pouring in. It would be quick. The cold would finish him before he could dig out. He shakes his head. Morbid thoughts, the dawn thoughts. The time when the mind is most fragile. He takes another sip of coffee. It is cooling now, but still warm. The caffeine is kicking in a low-level hum in his nervous system. It sharpens his hearing. He can hear the wind with new clarity. It is not just a roar, it is a layered sound. There is the deep bass of the impact, the mid-range moan of the eaves, the high-pitched whistle of the wire. The wire. He can hear the wire singing. It is a harmonic overtone, a faint, metallic vibration that transfers from the pole to the building. Hum. He closes his eyes and focuses on the hum. It is the song of the copper. It is the only thing connecting him to the earth. As long as it hums, the line is intact. If the hum stops, the wire is down. He listens intensely. The pitch varies slightly with the wind speed. It goes up, it goes down. It is a living instrument. He opens his eyes. The room is lighter. The gray has seeped in further. He can see the far corners of the room now without the aid of the lantern. There is a broom in the corner, a shovel, a stack of old crates. They emerge from the shadows like developed photographs. They are mundane, dusty objects. They lose the mystery they held in the dark. The room is revealed as a gritty, dirty place. The romance of the night is gone. The reality of the day is here. He sees the dust on the floor. It is everywhere, a fine gray powder. He sees the soot stains on the ceiling. He sees the scratches on the stove. The light is merciless. It shows the age, the wear, the decay. He feels dirty. He hasn't washed in. How long? He rubs his face. His beard is thick, itchy. His skin feels greasy. He longs for a hot bath, a tub of steaming water, soap, clean towels. The fantasy is so vivid he can almost smell the soap. But the smell of the room returns. Kerosene, coal, stale coffee. He looks at the logbook again. He feels the need to write something else, to fill the emptiness of the page. 06:30, he writes. Dawn broke, gray, cold, intense. Stove drawing well. He underlines cold, intense. It feels important to document the temperature. It is the antagonist of the story. He stands up to pace again. The chair releases him. He walks his circuit. Desk, stove, window, shelf. Desk, stove, window, shelf. He is a planet orbiting a dark star. He walks with his hands behind his back, head down. He counts his steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, turn. He does this for 10 minutes. It warms his legs. It keeps the blood from pooling. He stops at the window. He looks at the patch. It is holding. The ice has cemented the paper to the glass. It looks permanent. He touches it. Rock hard. He wonders if he will ever be able to remove it. When the spring comes, will he have to scrape it off with a knife? Spring. The word feels foreign, a concept from a different language. He looks past the patch at the sliver of frost-covered glass that remains exposed. The light coming through is flat, diffusionless. It is like looking into a tank of milk. There is no depth, no shadows outside, just white, whiteout. The condition where the sky and the ground merge, where all visual reference is lost. If he walked out there, he would fall over. He would have no horizon to balance against. He turns back to the room. The lantern is struggling now. The ambient light is fighting the artificial light. The result is a muddy, yellowish-gray atmosphere. It is the ugliest time of day, the time of transition. He walks to the lantern. He turns the wick down slightly, conserving oil. The flame shrinks. The yellow light recedes. The gray light advances. The room becomes colder in appearance. A blue-gray tint washes over the wood. He sits down. He wraps his hands around the coffee cup. It is lukewarm now. He drinks the rest in one go. It is sludge at the bottom, gritty. He swallows it. It is fuel. He puts the cup down, clink. He looks at the batteries. In the daylight, or what passes for it, the blue liquid looks different. It is less luminous, more chemical. It looks like copper sulfate. It loses its magic. It is just a salt dissolved in water, but it is still working. The separation holds. The gravity cell defies the entropy of the storm. He checks the galvanometer. The needle is steady. The current is there. The invisible river flows. He is the lockkeeper. He watches the river. He feels a heavy wave of tiredness roll over him. The coffee gave him a spike, but now the crash is coming. The adrenaline of the night is fading, replaced by the crushing weight of the sleepless hours. His head feels heavy, like a bowling ball balanced on a straw. His neck muscles ache. He wants to lay his head on the desk, just for a minute, just to rest his eyes. He fights it. He shakes his head. No, he cannot sleep. Not yet. The day shift requires vigilance. The trains might try to move. The plows might be sent out. He must be ready. He pinches the bridge of his nose. He hurts. His eyes burn. He looks at the sounder. He fixes his gaze on it. He uses it as a focal point. He meditates on the brass. I am the operator. I am awake. I am listening. He repeats the mantra. The wind gusts again. The building shudders. A draft curls around his legs. The cold is relentless. It probes. It searches. It waits. He pulls his coat tighter. He adjusts the scarf around his neck. He is a fortress. He will not yield. He reaches for the pencil. He starts to doodle on a scrap of paper. He draws a cube, then another cube. He stacks them. He draws a wall of cubes. He is building a station on paper, a perfect sealed station where the wind cannot enter. He shades the cubes with the pencil, dark, heavy strokes. The graphite shines on the paper. He stops. He listens. Was that a click? He looks at the sounder, still. He must have imagined it. The auditory hallucinations are starting. The mind trying to create patterns out of the noise. He puts the pencil down. He sits, he waits. The gray light slowly, imperceptibly brightens. The day has begun. The storm has not ended. The long wait continues. The extinguishing of the lantern marks a fundamental shift in the atmosphere of the room, a transition from the warm, artificial intimacy of the night to the cold, clinical reality of the day. The operator reaches up, his hand trembling slightly with a fatigue that has settled deep into the muscle fibers, and turns the brass wheel of the burner. The flame, which has been his companion for 12 hours, shrinks rapidly. It goes from a tall, confident tongue of fire to a small, nervous bead of blue light, and then, with a faint pop and a final wisp of acrid smoke, it vanishes. The room is instantly plunged into a different kind of darkness. It is not the pitch black of the night, but a heavy, flat grayness that seems to suck the color out of the world. The amber glow that had softened the rough edges of the logs and the scarred surface of the desk is gone, replaced by a diffused, shadowless light that filters through the frost-covered window. This new light is merciless. It reveals the grime that the lantern had hidden. The operator sees the layer of gray dust that coats the floorboards, a fine, powdery sediment that has sifted down from the ceiling during the storm. He sees the soot stains on the wall above the lantern hook, a dark, greasy smudge that looks like a shadow burned into the wood. He sees the dullness of the telegraph key, the tarnish on the brass that his polishing had failed to fully remove. The room looks older, colder, and more abandoned in this gray illumination. It looks like a place where time has stopped, where the vibrant energy of life has been drained away, leaving only a husk of wood and iron. The smell of the extinguished wick hangs in the air, a pungent, oily scent that mixes with the stale coffee and the sulfur of the stove. It is the smell of a machine that has been turned off. The operator sits in the chair, his hands resting on his knees, and lets his eyes adjust to the gloom. The corners of the room are still dark, but it is a flat, uninviting darkness, not the mysterious, deep shadow of the night. The visual style has shifted from the rich chiaroscuro of the lantern light to a monochromatic study in slate and ash. It is a drawing made with a single, hard pencil on gray paper. He looks at the coal scuttle. In the daylight, the situation is starkly visible. The mound of coal has been reduced to a shallow layer at the bottom of the bucket. He leans forward, counting the lumps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perhaps 12 decent-sized pieces and a handful of dust and slack. 12 lumps. He does the mental arithmetic, a calculation that is as cold and unforgiving as the wind outside. If he burns 2 lumps an hour, he has 6 hours of heat. If he burns 1 lump an hour, he has 12. But 1 lump an hour might not be enough to keep the frost from creeping across the floor. It might not be enough to keep the batteries from freezing. He is facing a thermal deficit. The equation of survival is becoming unbalanced. He looks at the stove. The fire is currently stable, a bed of red coals that are slowly turning to gray ash. He can feel the heat radiating from the iron, but it feels weaker now, as if the gray light of the day is actively cooling the room, pressing against the heat, compressing it into a smaller and smaller sphere. He decides to wait. He will not add coal yet. He will stretch the current fire until the last possible moment, until the iron turns black and the chill begins to bite through his coat. It is a dangerous game of brinkmanship, playing the thermodynamics of the room against the biology of his own body. He pulls his coat tighter, buttoning the top button that he usually leaves open. The wool is scratchy against his neck, a constant, abrasive reminder of his armor. He tucks his hands into his pockets. He feels the lining of the pockets, a smooth cotton that is cool to the touch. He finds a small object in the right pocket, a hard, round disc. He pulls it out. It is a peppermint drop wrapped in cellophane. He stares at it. He had forgotten it was there. It is a tiny treasure, a relic from a world of commerce and candy stores. He unwraps it slowly, the crinkle of the cellophane sounding loud and brittle in the quiet room. He places the white lozenge on his tongue. The taste is sharp, sweet, and intensely cold. The peppermint opens his sinuses, a blast of chemical winter inside his mouth that mirrors the physical winter outside. He sucks on it slowly, savoring the sugar. It is the first food he has had in hours. It is a meager breakfast, but the sugar provides a tiny spike of energy to his tired brain. He stands up. The pacing must continue. The body must move. If he sits too long, the blood slows, the core temperature drops, the lethargy takes over. He walks to the window. The patch he made with the wet paper is dry now, or rather frozen solid. It is a permanent part of the window structure. He touches it. It feels like rough stone. He looks at the frost surrounding it. The crystals have lost their sparkle. In the flat light, they look like compacted salt. He tries to look through the narrow strip of glass that remains uncovered near the top of the frame. He stands on his tiptoes. He sees nothing but a swirling, chaotic whiteness. There is no separation between earth and sky. It is a white void, a null space. The snow is not falling down. It is flying sideways, a horizontal river of ice particles that flows endlessly past the glass. To step out into that would be to step into a grinder. The wind would scour the skin from the face. The cold would freeze the lungs. The station is a diving bell at the bottom of a hostile ocean. He turns away from the window, retreating to the relative safety of the room's interior. He walks to the map on the wall. He studies the contour lines. He traces the elevation, 4,000 feet, 5,000 feet. The pass is at 6,000 feet. He is sitting at 5,200. He is high up in the thin air in the zone where the weather is born. He looks at the names of the peaks surrounding the valley. Mount Silas, Iron Mountain, the Razor. They are hard names for hard places. They are invisible now, shrouded in the storm, but he feels their presence. They are the walls of his prison. They loom over the station, blocking the wind, channeling the gale, compressing the air until it screams. He returns to the desk. He picks up the pen. He feels the urge to maintain the log even if there is nothing to report. The act of writing is a proof of life. He opens the book. The page is gray in the dim light. The blue lines are faint. He writes, 0800, daylight present but weak, visibility 0, coal supply low, rationing commenced, temp inside station dropping. He writes slowly, his hand stiff. The ink flows thickly. He looks at the words. Rationing commenced. It sounds official, military. It gives a sense of purpose to his suffering. He is not just freezing. He is managing a shortage. He is in command of the situation. He puts the pen down and looks at the sounder. The silence of the instrument has a different quality in the daylight. At night, the silence felt expectant, a pause in the darkness. In the day, the silence feels abandoned. It feels like the wire has been cut, the poles snapped, the world on the other end washed away. He stares at the brass coils. He wills them to magnetize. He imagines the current flowing through them, pulling the armature down with a sharp click. He hallucinates the sound. For a split second he hears it, click-clack. His head snaps up. He looks at the arm. It is motionless. It was in his mind. The auditory cortex is playing tricks, filling the void with the sounds it craves. He rubs his ears. He hears the dry sound of his gloves against his skin. SHHH. That is real. The click was a ghost. He leans back in the chair, the wood creaking. He closes his eyes. He listens to the wind. It has shifted tone again. It is no longer a steady roar. It is gusting rhythmically. Whoosh, pause, whoosh, pause. It sounds like the breathing of a giant beast, a slow respiration of ice. He counts the breaths. In, out, in, out. The building responds to each exhalation of the storm. The walls creak, the roof groans. The station is a wooden lung, expanding and contracting with the pressure. He feels the movement in his spine. He is coupled to the building. He is part of the structure. He thinks about the other operators. Are they rationing their coal? Are they staring at their windows? He imagines the man at the summit station. It must be worse there. The wind at the summit is unobstructed. It would be screaming like a banshee. Maybe the summit station is gone, blown off the mountain. Maybe the operator is huddled in the wreckage, buried in the snow. The thought makes him shudder. He is lucky. He is in the valley. He has walls. He has 12 lumps of coal. He is rich compared to the man at the summit. He opens his eyes. He looks at the stove. The red glow is fading. The ash is taking over. It is time. He cannot wait any longer. The cold is beginning to settle in his feet, a numbness that starts at the toes and creeps up the ankles. He stands up. He walks to the scuttle. He picks up the shovel. He selects one lump, a medium-sized one. He holds it on the shovel, weighing it. It feels light, too light. It contains only a finite amount of heat. He opens the stove door. The interior is dark red. He places the lump carefully in the center. He rakes the remaining coals around it, banking them up to cradle the new fuel. He blows gently on the embers. A faint orange glow responds. He closes the door. He adjusts the draft to the minimum setting. He wants a slow burn, a smoldering fire. He is feeding the stove with an eyedropper. He returns to the chair. He sits. He waits for the heat. It does not come as a wave. It comes as a subtle cessation of the cooling. The room stabilizes. It does not get warmer, but it stops getting colder. That is the victory, equilibrium. He looks at the paperweight, the glass sphere with the frozen storm inside. He picks it up. It is colder than ever. It feels like a piece of ice from the glacier. He holds it in his hand, letting his body heat transfer to the glass. He is warming the storm. He wonders if he could melt the snow inside if he held it long enough. But it is just pigment and glass. It is a static image, like the view from the window. He begins to clean the desk. It is a mindless task, a way to occupy the hands. He takes a rag and wipes the surface of the wood. He moves the papers, the inkwell, the pen stand. He wipes the dust away. He creates a clean zone in front of him. He arranges the objects in a perfect line. Pen, ink, blotter, paperweight, symmetry, order. In a chaotic universe, geometry is a comfort. He aligns the edge of the blotter with the edge of the desk. He adjusts the angle of the pen. He is creating a mandala of bureaucracy. He looks at the dust motes floating in the gray light. They are moving slower now. The air in the room is still. The heat currents are weak. The dust hangs suspended, frozen in space. He watches one particular speck. It drifts down, then up, then sideways. It is a Brownian motion driven by the invisible collisions of air molecules. He imagines himself as that speck, drifting, aimless, trapped in a box. He feels a hunger pang, a sharp cramp in his stomach. The peppermint drop is long gone. His body is demanding fuel. He thinks about the food box under the cot in the back room. There is a tin of biscuits, a jar of preserved peaches, some dried beef. He could eat. But to get them, he would have to leave the main room. He would have to go into the back room, which is unheated. It would be like stepping into a freezer. He weighs the cost. Is the calorie gain worth the heat loss? He decides to wait. He will eat at noon. Noon is the target. If he can make it to noon, he will reward himself with a biscuit. He looks at the watch. 9:15. The morning is dragging. The hours are sticky, viscous. They refuse to pass. He winds the watch again. He winds it every hour now. He is afraid it will stop. If the watch stops, time stops. He needs the ticking. It is the heartbeat of the room, tick, tick, tick. It is a fast, nervous sound. It contrasts with the slow, heavy beat of the wind. He looks at the batteries. The daylight has robbed them of their mystery. They look like industrial jars. The blue liquid is dull. The zinc is corroded. He worries about the temperature of the fluid. If it drops below a certain point, the internal resistance of the battery rises. The voltage drops. The current weakens. He walks over to the shelf. He touches the glass of the nearest jar. It is freezing. It feels dangerously cold. He considers wrapping the jars in rags, insulating them. But he has no warm rags. The rags are as cold as the room. He could use his spare shirt. He thinks about it. It might help. He goes to the corner, rummages in his bag, and pulls out a flannel shirt. It is old, checked red and black. He tears it into strips. The sound of tearing fabric is loud, violent. Rip. He takes the strips and wraps them around the glass jars. He makes little scarves for the batteries. He ties them tight. It looks ridiculous. A row of glass jars wearing mufflers, but it might save a few degrees of heat. It might keep the chemistry alive. He feels a sense of accomplishment. He has taken action. He has defended the power source. He returns to the desk. He feels slightly warmer from the exertion. He sits. He looks at the bandaged batteries. They look like a line of invalid soldiers. They are holding the line. He salutes them mentally. Stay warm, boys. He looks at the telegraph key. He rests his hand on the desk next to it. He feels the vibration of the wire coming through the wood. It is faint, but it is there. The hum, the singing wire, it is a lifeline. He closes his eyes and visualizes the wire stretching out into the gray void. He sees it coated in ice, a thick white cylinder of frost. He sees the icicles hanging from the insulators. He sees the poles leaning under the wind. It is a miracle of engineering. That a thin strand of metal can survive this assault. It is stronger than he is. He is flesh and blood. The wire is copper and iron. The wire will last. He is not so sure about himself. He opens his eyes. The room is still gray. The light has not changed. It is a static, timeless light. It could be 9:00 a.m. or 4:00 p.m. The sun is lost. The earth has stopped rotating. He feels a wave of despair. It is a quiet, heavy despair. It is not panic. It is just a realization of his own smallness. He is nothing. He is a speck of dust in a storm. The storm does not care if he freezes. The railroad does not care. The wire does not care. He is alone. He pushes the despair away. He focuses on the stove. The faint orange glow. The heat. The heat is real. The heat cares. As long as he has coal, he has a friend. He looks at the scuttle. 11 lumps. He counts them again. Still 11. They haven't multiplied. He sighs. He picks up the manual. He reads the preface. The telegraph is the nervous system of the railroad. He reads the sentence over and over. Nervous system. Nerves. Impulses. He is a neuron. A single nerve ending in a vast body. He is numb. The cold has anesthetized him. He pinches his arm. He feels it, but it feels distant, like he is pinching someone else's arm. He looks at the frost on the window. It has grown thicker. The patch is now buried under a new layer of ice. The window is sealing itself up. Soon, the glass will be gone, replaced by a wall of ice. He will be in a cave. He imagines the station filling with ice. A slow, glacial intrusion. He stands up. He needs to move. He paces. 4 steps turn, 4 steps turn, the floorboards creak. The sound is familiar. He knows the voice of every board. This one is a high squeak. That one is a low groan. He plays the floor like an instrument. He walks a melody of creaks. It is a song of boredom. He stops at the stove. He warms his hands. He holds them close to the metal. He can feel the heat, but his hands are still cold. The cold is inside him now. It is in his blood. He needs hot food. He needs soup. He needs fire. But he has a peppermint and 11 lumps of coal. He returns to the chair. He sits. He waits. The wind blows. The watch ticks. The wire hums. The gray light persists. The operator is a statue of endurance. He is carved from wood and wool. He sits in the gray silence and keeps the line open. He waits for the click that does not come. He waits for the sun that does not shine. He waits. He looks at the inkwell. The ink is black and still, a pool of night in the day. He dips the pen. He holds it over the paper. He doesn't write. He just holds it, the potential for communication. He is ready. If the word comes, he will write it. If the world speaks, he will record it. Until then, he is the silent witness. The room breathes. In, out, the cold presses, the fire resists, the battle continues, quietly, slowly, endlessly. The gray light of the day, which had never truly established a foothold in the room, begins to fail. It does not withdraw with the pageantry of a sunset, for there is no sun to set. There is only a gradual thickening of the atmosphere, a slow coagulation of the shadows that have been hiding beneath the desk and behind the stove. The slate-colored illumination that had filtered through the frosted window turns to a bruised purple, then to a deep, heavy indigo, and finally, inevitably, to the charcoal black of the returned night. The transition is seamless and silent, a dimmer switch being turned down by an invisible hand over the course of 2 hours. The operator watches the room disappear. He watches the corners dissolve into the void. He watches the details of the floorboards, the grain, the nail heads, the dust, fade into a uniform obscurity. The room is shrinking again, closing in around him, forcing him back towards the center, towards the memory of the heat. He sits in the chair, a dark shape in a darker room. He has not lit the lantern yet. He is rationing the oil just as he is rationing the coal. He sits in the blind dark, listening to the wind. The wind has not tired. If anything, it has found a second wind, a deeper, more resonant note that vibrates in the chest cavity. The station is a wooden resonator, a cello played by the storm. Every gust that hits the north wall sends a shudder through the floor, a tremor that travels up the legs of the chair and into the operator's spine. He is physically connected to the storm. He feels the weather as a somatic experience, a series of pressures and vibrations that define his reality. The cold is absolute. In the darkness, without the psychological comfort of the light, the cold feels like a solid presence. It wraps around his ankles like icy water. It presses against his face like a cold mask. He can feel the heat leaching out of his body, radiating away from his core into the hungry air of the room. He pulls his arms inside his coat, hugging his ribs. He tucks his chin down into the rough wool of his collar. He is a closed system, trying to retain every joule of energy. His breath comes in shallow, measured clouds that he cannot see but can feel on his face. Warm, moist dampness that instantly turns cold. He knows he cannot sit in the dark forever. The darkness breeds hallucinations. It allows the mind to project shapes onto the void. Already, he imagines movement in the corner by the door, a shifting of shadows, a silent figure standing there. He blinks, but the image remains, a trick of the optic nerve deprived of input. He needs the light. He needs the anchor of the visual world. He reaches into his pocket and finds the box of matches. The wood of the box is smooth. He slides it open. He extracts a match. The head of the match is rough. He strikes it against the side of the box. Scritch fizz. The sound is shockingly loud. A flare of yellow light explodes in the darkness, blinding him for a moment. The smell of sulfur is sharp and pungent, a scent of ignition. He holds the match, watching the flame eat the wood. It is a tiny, desperate life. He shields it with his cupped hand, protecting it from the drafts that prowl the room. He stands up, moving stiffly, and walks to the lantern. He navigates by memory and the small circle of matchlight. He locates the lantern hook. He feels for the wheel. He turns it, raising the wick. He brings the match to the burner. The oil catches. The flame jumps from the wood to the cotton. A blue base, a yellow tip. He lowers the chimney. The light steadies, growing, pushing back the black walls of the night. The room rushes back into existence. The stove, the desk, the map, the window. They are all still there, waiting for him. They have not moved. They are his silent companions in the long wait. He blows out the match. A thin trail of smoke rises from the blackened stick. He drops it into the coal scuttle. It joins the ash and the dust. Now the fire. The stove is a black cylinder of fading heat. He places his hand near the iron. It is warm but not hot. The fire is dying. He needs to resuscitate it. He picks up the poker. He opens the door. The interior is a landscape of gray ash with a few dull red eyes peering through. He stirs it gently. He is a surgeon operating on a dying patient. He tries to consolidate the embers, raking them together to pool their heat. He looks at the scuttle. The count is grim. 8 lumps, 8 pieces of black rock to last. How long? Until morning, until the thaw. He does not know when the thaw will come. It could be days. He must assume the worst. He selects 1 lump. It is a small one, irregular in shape, veined with slate. He places it on the embers. He adds a second one, a larger piece. It is a gamble. He is betting 2 lumps on the hope that they will catch and burn hot enough to warm the casting. If they just smolder, he loses. He leaves the draft open for a minute, watching. The smoke curls around the new coal. Then a flicker, a blue flame. The gas ignites. The coal catches. He closes the door. He adjusts the damper to the slow setting. He has bought another 2 hours, maybe 3. He turns to the food. The hunger is a dull ache, a hollow space in his center. He walks to the back of the room, into the deeper shadows where the supply box sits. He opens the tin. He takes out a biscuit. It is hard, dry, a puck of baked flour and water. He takes a strip of dried beef. It is like leather, salty and tough. He carries his meal back to the desk. He sits down. He eats slowly. He gnaws on the beef, letting the salt dissolve in his mouth. He breaks the biscuit into small pieces, softening them with saliva before swallowing. There is no joy in the food, only function. It is fuel for the biological engine. He imagines the nutrients entering his blood, being burned to create body heat. He is a furnace, just like the stove. He looks at the water bucket. A thick crust of ice has formed on the surface. He has to hit it hard with the dipper to break it. Crumb crash. He drinks a ladle of freezing water. It shocks his teeth. It hurts his throat. But he needs the hydration. The dry air is desiccating him, turning him into a mummy of the storm. He returns to the desk. The meal is over. The fire is tended. The light is lit. The night shift has officially begun. It is exactly like the previous night. The loop has closed. He is back at the beginning. The day was merely a gray interlude, a dream of light that offered no warmth and no relief. The reality is the night. The reality is the storm. He looks at the window. The patch of paper and ice is a dark, opaque shape on the glass. The frost around it has thickened, creating a topographical map of ridges and valleys. He can no longer see the glass at all. The window is a wall of ice. He wonders if the snow outside has reached the sill. Has it reached the middle of the pane? Is the station being buried? He feels a claustrophobic tightening in his chest. He imagines the snow rising over the roof, covering the chimney, choking the smoke. He forces the image away. The smoke is drawn, the chimney is clear, he is safe. Picks up the manual of regulations. He opens it to the back, to the section on telegraphic codes. He reads the list of abbreviations. 1. Wait a minute. 4. Where shall I go ahead? 13. Understand. 25. Busy on another wire. 73. Best regards. He reads them silently, his lips moving slightly. It is a language of brevity, of efficiency. A language designed for a wire, not for a human voice. He whispers the codes into the room. 73. 73. Best regards to the empty room. Best regards to the frost. Best regards to the batteries. He looks at the batteries on the shelf. The flannel wrappings make them look domestic, cared for. He walks over to check them. He touches the glass through the fabric. It is cold but not freezing. The insulation is working. The blue liquid inside is dark, almost black in the shadows. He checks the connections. He runs his finger along the copper wire. It is intact. The circuit is physically sound. He stands before the map on the wall. He traces the line again. He follows it out of the valley, up the pass, across the plateau. He imagines the wire singing in the dark. He imagines the millions of snowflakes hitting the copper, bouncing off, accumulating on the cross arms of the poles. He thinks of the sheer physical scale of the storm. It covers the state. It covers the region. It is a massive, rotating system of energy, and he is a microscopic point of stillness within it. The thought is humbling. It removes the anxiety. He cannot fight the storm. He can only endure it. He sits back down in the chair. He assumes the position, elbows on the desk, chin in hands, eyes on the sounder, the classic pose of the telegrapher. He is a statue dedicated to the god of communication. He waits. The silence of the sounder is deep and profound. It is not just an absence of noise, it is a positive presence. It is a heavy, velvet silence that fills the room. He picks up the pen. He dips it in the ink. The ink is very thick now, almost a paste. He writes in the logbook, 20:00, night, storm continues, coal critical, line open. He looks at the words. Line open. It is a statement of faith. He has no proof. He has not heard a signal in 24 hours, but the galvanometer says the current is there. The needle says the loop is closed. He trusts the needle. He trusts the physics. The line is open. He puts the pen down. He leans back. The chair creaks. He listens to the wind. It has a rhythm now. Surge, fade, surge, fade. It is hypnotic. It lulls the brain. He feels his eyelids drooping. He fights it. He snaps his head up. He cannot sleep. If he sleeps, the fire goes out. If the fire goes out, he dies. It is that simple. The equation of survival is binary. Fire equals life. No fire equals death. He needs to move. He stands up. He paces. The floorboards are colder than before. The cold is coming up through the soles of his boots. He stamps his feet. Thud, thud. He swings his arms. He twists his torso. He is doing calisthenics in a freezer. He feels ridiculous, but he continues. He must generate heat. He must keep the engine running. He walks to the window and presses his ear against the frame. He listens to the outside. He hears the hiss of the snow. He hears the moan of the wind in the eaves. He hears something else. A deep cracking sound, like a tree snapping. It comes from the forest somewhere out in the blackness. A giant pine loaded with snow giving up the ghost, snapping under the weight, falling into the drifts. A silent death in the forest. He pulls away from the window. He is glad to be inside. Even with the cold, even with the rationing, he is glad for the logs and the nails. He returns to the chair. He looks at the paperweight, the frozen storm in glass. He spins it on the desk. It rotates, a blur of blue and white. It creates a small sound, whirr. He watches it spin until it slows and stops. Friction, entropy, everything stops eventually. He thinks about the future. Will the storm end tomorrow? Will the sun come out? Will a train come plowing through the drifts, whistle blowing, steam billowing? He tries to visualize it. The black engine against the white snow. The noise, the heat, the faces of the crew. It seems like a fantasy, a story from a book. The reality is this room, this chair, this cold. He looks at the coal scuttle. 7 lumps left. He has burned 2. He has 7. If he burns one every 2 hours, he has 14 hours. That will get him to mid-morning. He can make it. He just has to be disciplined. He just has to be hard. He looks at the coal with affection. They are his diamonds. They are his life. He pulls the coat tighter. He buries his hands in his armpits. He assumes the fetal position in the chair. He is conserving surface area. He watches the lantern flame. It is a small yellow spirit. It dances. It wavers. It is alive. He talks to it in his head. Burn slow, little one. Burn slow. The hours pass. The watch ticks. 9:00 p.m., 10:00 p.m., 11:00 p.m. He winds the watch. He stokes the fire, 1 lump at a time. The room gets colder. The frost creeps across the floor. It reaches the leg of the desk. He watches it come. He does not move his feet. He lets the frost claim the territory. He holds the high ground of the chair. He slips into a state of semi-consciousness. He is awake, but he is dreaming. He dreams he is the wire. He is stretching over the mountains. He feels the ice on his skin. He feels the wind vibrating his core. He feels the electricity flowing through him, a warm, tingling current. He is carrying the messages of the world. Safe arrival. Mark it up. Happy birthday. Mother is ill. Train delayed. He carries them all. He is the conduit. He is the keeper of the line. He wakes with a start. The fire has burned low. The room is freezing. He shivers violently. His teeth chatter, click, click, click. He stands up, stumbling on numb feet. He goes to the stove. He adds a lump of coal. He opens the draft. He waits for the catch. The flame appears. He sighs. He is still here. He sits back down. He looks at the sounder. It is silent, but he knows it is watching him. It is a brass eye. It waits for him to fail. He will not fail. He stares back at it. I am here, he thinks. I am always here. The night stretches out before him, an infinite plain of darkness. He is not afraid of it anymore. He has become part of it. He is the night watchman. He is the stillness in the center of the storm. He settles deeper into the coat. He lowers his head. He breathes in, out. Vapor clouds the air. He rests his hand on the table, fingers spread. He touches the wood. He touches the brass key. It is cold, smooth, perfect. He leaves his hand there, a connection. Flesh to metal, metal to wire, wire to world. The wind howls, the snow piles up. The lantern flickers, the operator sits. He does not move, he does not speak. He waits, and the line, silent and invisible in the storm, remains open. The darkness is not empty. It is full of the hum of the wire. The operator closes his eyes, but he does not sleep. He listens to the hum. It is a lullaby of copper and ice. It sings of distance. It sings of duty. It sings of the long, cold, beautiful night that never ends. He is the telegraph operator, and he is keeping the line open.